Good morning. I now call the June 20th, 2019 work session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this board meeting.
Good morning. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call the speakers' names in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last names. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these rules.
Thank you. We will now begin the work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing.
Thank you so much. Good morning and happy Thursday. I hope y'all are doing well. Just a few things that I want to touch on. I want to thank, first of all, Nicole and Elena, who's not here today, but Nicole and Elena, thank you so much for putting together all the packets for the board with all of the ICROC information and their things. And so that was all in your boxes, and it's my understanding you got it and you're good, and we're moving forward on Tuesday with that stuff on the consent agenda. And if you need anything, please let Nicole know if you need any other information. With Safe School Grants, I know that was some information that was brought up last time. I wanted to share this with you. I had conversation with Renee Sengens. I'm gonna pass this down for y'all to take a look at with the grants that, for you and Mr. Gibbs, with the grants that we've received at the top, and then the one at the bottom that we're waiting an award notice on. Then she emailed me this morning early and shared that there are some unusual ones out there that she is pursuing, so we'll keep you up to date on that as well. Next is, so yesterday afternoon, I received an email from the chancellor, and you know, especially lately with everything going on, when you get an email from the chancellor, like, ooh. So when I opened it up, Dr. Alves and I had a happy dance, and so I wanted to share with you what he sent us. You know that historically there has been unfortunate overrepresentation of minority children in ESE programs, and I am so pleased to say that he is letting us know that we do not have that. So that 15% of our IDEA grant that we would have had to have focused on the services of actually preventive services to ensure that doesn't happen, that nice big chunk of money can go into the proper use of it and taking care of the kids that need it. So I just want to say again, a huge thank you to Dr. Alves and her team for that. That's a huge accomplishment, And then the final thing is I've got Mr. Kelly here with some guests, and he wants to share some information with you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dean, Board, Dr. Mayor, Mr. Gibbs, Ms. Prestipino. I had the pleasure earlier this week of meeting with some members from Sheriff's Department, Preston Bowling here, and Jamie Banna, who's the county fire chief, and our county administrator, Mr. Monier. We had a meeting earlier in the week to talk about the shelter that Mr. Bowling presented at the last workshop that I was here. He talked about a regional hurricane shelter for special needs. And I had previously had some conversation with Jamie Banna, the fire chief, about some needs that he have. Both of these are county projects that they're looking at constructing, and they're trying to find locations for those places. The shelter that you heard of is a pretty large project, some 30,000 square feet of space. And I was interested in that, if we could bring that to MTC, if that was a possibility of building it on our property, we would have the opportunity to maybe build on top of that some classroom space. We could share some facilities together. 30,000 square feet is huge. We could use that for lab space, when there's not a hurricane, which I'm going to hope is a vast majority of the year. It will have to have a kitchen, so we could build culinary program within that facility. There are several things that could be built within that 30,000 square feet. On the other part of this, the county fire is needing to build an ambulance station, right? And that ambulance station has to be within a certain proximity of the hospital, and MTC is certainly in that proximity. And here's an opportunity. They need about a 7,000 square foot building that can put about 6 ambulances in it and have living quarters above it. And what I've asked from them is, okay, if we built that, could we build some classroom space on the back side of it? And then we could teach some part of our fire college that already exists. We could go in there and we could, if MTI comes over in the future, we have a place to do our independent first responder program. So here's 2 projects that have some potential of the county, city, us working together. Now, is there red tape to that and lots of work to get done? Absolutely. But it's something that I just wanted to open the door and let's have some conversation, see if there's interest from the board to continue some conversations with that. Like I said, there's certainly some issues. My biggest concern is space at MTC. Can we fit it? But, leave that to some experts of architects and engineers to just do a site analysis of our facility there and see, is this something that we could put together? On the county side, I think they are ready to do some things. I'm not going to commit their funds for it, but I know they have a plan of how to fund it. The ambulance station is something that has to be built. In the next year, it has to break ground. So, there's a little bit of urgency on that part of it, but just wanted some input from the board before we talk any more about that.
Could this help with our MTI issue? That's my question.
Absolutely.
I mean, to have that type of partnership would be fabulous.
Absolutely, and my wish would be, yes, it would, we know we had $9 million slated to build MTI over there. That should be able to lower that cost because we should be able to share facilities. A lot of details to work out, I know, but it absolutely will help.
I love the concept. Love the concept. It's intergovernmental collaboration. It's got a safety element with having first responders on our campus. So there's the protection piece, the potential employment opportunities, for kids to get exposed, even more exposure to what would be there that would be new. And it lines up with what we're working on with sharing the commission boardroom, possibly, the county commission's boardroom. It's what we have that we can share and what they have that they can share, and let's work together. What a concept. The devil's always in the details and in the finances, and you put it best, Mr. Kelly. We've got bigger heads that can work on that part and bring it to us, but I am all for exploring it.
Absolutely.
You want to add, Ms. Stacy? Are you good? You're good. She's good. I agree with my other board members. I also like it for the fact that we're looking forward, because I was just at a consensus, or the Florida 2030, and right now, one of our highest areas of growth is healthcare and ambulance and stuff like that. So I agree with everything that was said, and I love that we would be working with our other governmental entities and stuff like that. So I believe we have a consensus from this board that we are very interested in exploring this. We also need to make sure that we include our boss lady, Boston Ellis, in this conversation, because, we have to make sure that we can.
What I see the first thing to do is, can it fit? I mean, there's no use of talking if it can't happen on our property. So we need just a quite analysis from, probably Mr. Knight can help us out on that, if can we do this on our property? And I know they need to know, relatively quick, that they're going to have to look for property and look for another avenue if we can't provide that. So
Love it.
Well, we are open for that
Okay.
discussion, so,
we will carry on with some conversation then.
perfect. Thank you.
Preston? Yeah.
Just going along with Preston Bull, Emergency Management Director for the record. Just going along with Mr. Kelly, and being a past school board member, working for the, MTC, Florida, at the Florida State Fire College. For 18 years, one of the things was space for the EMT program, for the fire service programs, and what I would like to do is take Mr. Knight, Mr. Kelly down to the Fasano building down at Pasco County and actually show them the layout of this building, of the way, and it was a regional concept that had direction from the state Department of Emergency Management as well. And one of the key things that I thought that would be a perfect fit, not only the partnerships, with Marion County Fire Rescue for fire, to be able to hold those programs, the EMS programs, but having the open floor concept on the bottom and having a convention style where they can put the dividers, sliders to where they can move, so you can actually put other programs, other labs in there. And just like you have the culinary program at MTC, it would be that same concept, because it would have a large commercial kitchen to where we would need for special needs to be able to feed 1,000 people. Then you can still do your banquets, you can still do, there's just endless amounts. And that was one of the things with Mr. Monier and myself, is if we were looking to do this from the Marion County just on our own entity, is what do we do with that building the rest of the year? I mean, and if we go through that 14-year lull where we have no storms, is the building's going to decay because it's not being used, on a regular basis. So again, as the partnerships is having Chief Bana and his staff in there, you all having fire rescue right there on campus, putting our special needs in the Impact Cat 5. It benefits the school board as well, because we will concentrate all our special needs in that one building. And even after a storm, if you're trying to get your programs back moving again, they'll be downstairs. We'll still have the security and HEPA, considerations. You can still continue classrooms upstairs, and then, we can disperse, as needed from there. Closest to the hospital, City of Ocala Electric, there's just
A lot of upside
a
potential.
lot of positives, and again, it's a lot of planning, as Mr. Kelly said, having, 3 entities. But again, the partnerships and that, as Marion County is pulling together now, and, the key people that we have in play is just, I can't see, it's a win-win for everybody, and I think it's an awesome opportunity. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
And thank you for your forward thinking in this and just grabbing it and running with it, but all three of you. Appreciate you all very much.
Thank you.
One question. I'm assuming Mr. Vianello is on board with this whole concept as well, okay?
Absolutely. Mr.
Okay,
Brunello is over at MTC right now.
Okay.
With an in-service, or he would be
okay,
here with us.
all right. So just wanted to be sure that we're not going to have a problem with that. Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Nope, that was it. Thanks.
You're good. Okay, we're going to do things a little different today. Eric is out of the state. Nancy and I are going to have to leave at 1 o'clock, and there will not be a quorum. So I do have some, not concerns, I have some things I need to address beforehand so we don't run out of time. And Nancy, I believe you do too. So we're going to go ahead and just do board comments now, and then we'll go through our work session. So Nancy, I'm going to begin with you. So,
Okay, good. Just pull it up real quick. I made some notes to myself on June 16th in my phone, and so that's what I'm using my phone for. And I just wanted to reopen last Tuesday's school board meeting conversation and just take a minute to talk calmly and frankly about heat stroke and death. Despite my personal opinions on physical fitness of kids, and I dare say some adults too these days, we're here, number one, to support and protect our kids, and by extension, the district, in the most fiscally responsible manner. We're proving ourselves to be a proactive board, and we need to continue this by being the board that leads the conversation in this area. And with this in mind, I have a few ideas to throw out. With the input of band directors, continued input, I think they've already given us input. Let's put current best practices and technology to good use. There are local weather apps that can notify leaders in real time when the heat index is becoming dangerously high. This app should be on someone's phone during practice and could be very useful, even life-saving. 2 people could be CPR certified in case anyone falls out. It takes a while for EMS to make it to the field, especially in our outlying schools. And training is really important. Training regarding signs of heat-related illness, it must be comprehensive enough and be taken seriously enough to be truly useful. And successful completion needs to be documented along with frequent refreshers. And kids need to be conditioned slowly. For too many, outside activity is the exception, not the norm these days. And fortunately for them, they have youth on their side, and they will get strong quickly. With common sense policy in place, we might inspire, and this is the part that to me is the most important, we might inspire even more participation, because parents that may be hesitant will be reassured that their kids will be protected and also, importantly, challenged to a new level of fitness and health. And I think that's a great outcome, that we can all support. I'd like to get on the same page now, not solve everything today, but think in terms of practical guidelines. So band directors are crystal clear on how to move forward now, while we developed, as our chairman suggested, a solid policy, which other proactive districts are already in the process of doing. I researched that. So I'd just like to know how this sounds to all of you, and I think that it's something that we need to get to closure on and have a path forward on.
Nancy, I love it. I think the weather app, I love the CPR certified. And, I sit on the state board for the Florida Music Association, and I think this should come also under them as some of their recommendations for their band directors. And common sense tells me that people working with our young people outside would have that app anyway. And I always think that, especially when you're working either in sports or on the field with band, that somebody needs to be CPR certified. And so maybe if we can help with that. And there are courses that we can bring in to help certify those people, the band directors or their assistants. So I think I was pleased with the schedules from the band directors because it did look like they were using common sense and not having the kids out too long in the heat of the day. So, but just to take it to the next step to be sure that our kids' safety is the #1 priority. I agree 100% with you.
Okay, as was stated last week, it was too late to do policy at this point. We could put, or Dr. Mayer can put procedures in at any time. And I think, maybe Jody Phillips could just put something together real quick. I would think, I don't know, maybe they could show proof. An app this day and age, I think everybody has that, or a TV even that morning to know that there's a heat advisory. I think that's just a given.
Sometimes what happens is, at 10 in the morning, there's a nice breeze blowing and there's overcast, and so why not stay out a little longer? So that's why I was thinking about an app where you can put in the location and, kind of the right now, because Florida weather changes in a split minute. But you're right, hopefully they are availing themselves of that. And if there's any additional research or background you have, Dr. Mayer, you're part of this conversation too.
Thanks. I'm glad you brought up the Florida State Music Association, and so glad that you are part of it. Kevin, can you bring up that website? Because actually, the Florida State Music Association guidelines are more strict than what we have in place. And they suggest not being outside between 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. Ours are a little less stringent. Now, the Florida State Music Association is much like the Florida High School Athletic Association is to football teams. And we know that the Florida Athletic Association has had these restrictions in place. And I'll quote Mr. Phillips when he said, like forever, Dr. Mayer. So it's nothing new, but I would encourage you to take a look at this website and at their guidelines, because they do say no rehearsals before 11 a.m. or after 6 p.m. And their guidelines for band directors as well said between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. And that's pretty much where our band directors did come in at. And I'd also like to mention that all the principals had input. They had input back in March. Activity directors came together April 8th. Band directors came together April 7th with this information, knowing too that Mr. Phillips, Jody Phillips, had received some phone calls from legislators asking what our guidelines were, what our policies were, with the hint, I'll use the word hint, that they're looking at the state level for making rules and laws about, from the state level, about practice because of just, as you said, keeping our kids safe. So as he reached out to many other districts, as you mentioned, looking at Leon County, that does have policy in place about this, that's what was taken back to the band directors and shared. So that is that background on that, so. Thanks.
What I see public education headed for is scorched earth. We're making, by talking about this and making everything litigious, it's just opening a huge can of worms for, I mean, I've been involved with music and I don't remember ever, when I was in high school and all the way forward, a band student that did not already have a heart issue or something having a heat stroke during band practice. So now here we are at this. I've looked at the average heat index I just looked at last year, July and August. There's 1 degree difference between the two. Like one was like 89 degrees average and one was 88 degrees or something. I mean, there's like 1 degree in August. August is basically as hot a month just about as July. So now are we gonna just have our PE teachers wait until September to come back? Because we're gonna have elementary children, not 17 and 16-year-olds on a band field, practicing in, these kids are practicing in shorts, hats, water bottles hooked to them. And frankly, I've been in a marching band and twirled my entire life as a child. I've never seen that much athleticism take place on a practice field. When you get heavy in your equipment, you get heavy in your band uniform, yes, I can see how it would be overheating, just like with football pads and everything being a time to overheat because you're carrying all that extra weight. But kids in band camp in shorts and tank tops and hats, and they're out on the practice field for an hour and a half, and then they're back inside, for break, lunch. We are scorching public education earth here. We are going to make it now. If we have a student that's 7 years old, she's on the PE field at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. In August, when we start school back in the middle of August, then it's going to be our fault because we didn't keep the kids off the PE field. I don't know that we have an auditorium large enough at the elementary schools to keep the children, so I will have to suggest that we just bring the PE teachers back to school after Labor Day, so that we don't have this continuing litigation issue for a case to solve a problem that we don't have in band. I think public education's become a world for lawyers to suck off the public trough. It's gotten huge. Thank goodness there is a limit that they can get. What is it, 250,000? I mean, we have limits now on things that can happen, but public education, I might suggest that possibly we just make sure we send information home to all of our students on how they can homeschool, how they can belong to charter schools, and how they can do online education, and no one comes to school. Then we have no risk. That's the best way to limit our risk. Folks, we got to use some common sense here. All we talk about somebody suing us. We can't, I mean, in our schools, we can't have shop anymore because a child may injure their finger with a saw. Public education is becoming a world where lawyers are running it, not educators. And so I feel that we do need to postpone physical education to start the 1st of September so that we do not have children that are in elementary school having heat strokes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when we do not allow high school students to be out in the sun. Thank you.
Okay, so, point well taken from everyone. I do not think that we need to be having policy for everything, but I do think we need, I do think that the students, the band director should have the opportunity, hey, it's cloudy today, they should be outside rather than have a blanket. They can never be out from 10 to 5. But I do think we're using good common sense, or whatever we want to call it, if we do make sure, for example, that waivers are signed, that the band directors have proper training, because, maybe it's already in their professional development. I don't know, but that's just good practice anyways. And maybe not two, but at least one person on the field should have CPR should something happen. I don't think that's bad at all. I think that's just being proactive in case something does happen, because unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. I do not think that students should not be able to participate in PE until September. I think children should be outside. No, but
At 1 o'clock.
But, right, and I hear your point as well taken. I just think that it should just be some good procedures. I don't think we need to be telling our band directors that they can't be out.
Otherwise, it sounds like the state's going to make them for us.
They've
And
got-
that's the part that frosts me. You know, we want to be the proactive board that we're proving ourselves to be. And if we can get ahead of this with some simple, common sense guidelines that we can put into policy like other districts are doing proactively, then I don't see the downside to that particularly. And Ms. Stacy, I hear you. My shoes were off from May to the 1st of November. But these are different times, and if we want to get kids fit, then we have to also reassure parents that we've got them covered.
They
And
are,
they're-
parents are assured. I haven't heard one parent
I haven't
say.
either.
that they're not
A single
running-
parent complaining.
So we have the Florida State Music Association. They have their criteria. All of the band directors go to those conferences. They're going over this information. We don't need to recreate the wheel.
Right.
We need to look at what that criteria is, and we need to encourage them to follow it. It's just like the Florida High School Athletic Association. Those football coaches are encouraged to follow that criteria. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just ask them to look at, to take the recommendations, and I can guarantee you at those conferences, they're talking about this.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So they already are doing this and know it. So I don't really understand why this is even having to come before us. It should already be taken care of. It shouldn't even make it.
Why?
Because the band students were stripped of the time that they could be outside. And that's
parents called us.
yes, and I'm hearing from the parents like, hey, they can't be out from 10 to 5. And it wasn't making sense to them. So that's why it made it up to the board, because your administration had put some constraints on them and they didn't like it. And that's the only reason it is up
Who
here.
didn't like it?
Parents don't
Parents.
like it, because that's when their kids are going to band camp.
And
Right, well,
students.
And they're still practicing, and that was the point, and that's why the band directors all had input on their schedule, and you see that every schedule was different based upon that band director and what they thought best within the guidelines that had been discussed many times and within the safety parameters set forth by their state organization.
And it sounds like the music foundation they're talking, 10 to
11,
11 to 6. That sounds way more restrictive than anything I would entertain. So anyway, I just feel like it would be important to be on the same page, have some guidelines, probably get them into policy at some point like other proactive districts are doing, so that no one else does it for us, because the last thing I want to do is go down the road where kids can't go outside anymore. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of.
That is.
All right,
so
I'm done.
we'll look at that in the future, not right now, because there's nothing we can do about it now.
okay.
So, was there anything else,
That's probably enough.
Ms. Stacy?
Well, sometimes I think we come up with these distractions in public education to distract us from the fact that 1/3 of our third graders are scoring at a level 1 which is the highest almost number of level one third graders in the state of Florida. I think that's what we should be talking about. Because I think there's probably 1,000 very upset families when we got 3,000 of the students and a third of them almost are level ones. That is disastrous. And I think that that's probably what we should be discussing on how we're gonna deal with that. And not high school kids who, I don't even know of a high school kid that's ever had a heat stroke at band practice, maybe in full uniform or something at a parade, waiting to go online at a parade when it's really hot at 4th of July or something. But on the band, we're discussing unicorns, absolute unicorns. The reality is, we have a lot bigger fish to fry than that. Thank you.
Ms. McCall?
I have nothing.
Okay. I have a few items. At the last work session, when Preston Bolin was before us, we had discussion that we'd like to go to some EOC training. He is available on both July 30th and 31st. If we are available, he said it will probably take about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for us to go and visit and get a little bit of training. So do any of those dates work for you? It would be Tuesday, July 30th, or Wednesday, July 31st.
Either one worked for me. Either one.
Okay. Ms. Stacy, are you good?
What's the dates again?
July 30th or 31st? It's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, it's the end of July.
So where are we going?
The EOC, the Emergency Operations Center.
It's a Tuesday or Wednesday, you said?
It's either one of those days.
It'll probably work, I don't know.
Okay, either
That's
one.
way on
Ms.
down
Thrower?
I'm good. I just see that we have a special school board meeting, but that's not till 5:30 for the
Okay.
tentative budget.
All right, so does 9
Good with
o'clock?
either.
Okay.
Which,
How about,
Let's do a Tuesday. If we have to be in here anyway, let's just do it that same day.
all right, so let's do July 30th at 9. And then also, we have some early reentries. We have about 5 or 6 to come before the board in July, but we need to hear them. It would probably be best if we just took a morning and just had them come before us, hear their story, so then we could vote. We could do maybe July 23rd. We do have a school board meeting that evening at 5:30. So if we wanted to hear them that morning, come back for a school board meeting later, we could. Or I was looking at the dates between July 22nd and the 26th, except for, yeah, are you guys available
I don't have a
that
problem
week?
coming that morning and then coming back that night, just on
I'm
a
sorry, what
Tuesday.
was the,
July 23rd.
July 23rd works for me.
I'm good.
You good? Or did you guys want to do Monday, the 22nd? I mean, I'm good.
No, that's
So July 23rd for the early reentry
at 9?
at 9. Everybody good for 9? And then we have Raisin Associates. We received an email from Mr. Gibbs that they could come in and speak for us, or not for us, to us. I was looking at maybe the first, hold on, let me move to August. What did I have? We could do either August 1st or 2nd, or we have the week of August 5th through 9th.
Let's go ahead and do it early.
I'm not available on the 1st.
On the 1st,
I am available on the 2nd.
do you guys have preference from the 2nd or the following week? Or, well, actually, I want to give them like 3 dates. So let's go,
I mean, I'm not available on the 1st, but that doesn't mean they're talking to us individually, right,
Yeah.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I don't know if they're just coming in for that, so I don't know if you guys want to try and schedule, because they said they can get through all 5 on one day.
okay, so how about, let's try
I mean,
August
I can-
2nd,
Yeah,
and then let's look at the following week. So like maybe August 5th, 6th, or 7th. Do those 3 dates work for you guys, or?
So they're gonna do August 7th and then come back?
No, I need to give them a few dates. So like, say August 2nd doesn't work for them, then we have some other dates to go by.
August 7th works for me.
August 7th, does 7th work for you guys?
August 7th is fine.
Okay, so we got August 7th, and let's get one more date.
Now, I might,
Oh, the 9th.
I gotta granddaughter expected on August the 5th, so let's pray all goes August the 5th.
Okay. Are you guys available?
Then everything will work for me.
Are you guys available August 9th?
Yep. What day is that?
That's a Friday. And Beth, you are. Okay, so I'm going to present these dates, August 2nd, August 7th, and August 9th, and see what we come up with. Okay, all right, that's all I had. Thank you. All right, now we will move forward.
Had a couple.
Oh, sorry, Paul.
All right, I did just want to follow up and see if there's any guidance yet on the grand jury issue. As I've advised you guys, they were in panel a couple weeks ago. We have 18, all out of the 17th Judicial Circuit. They are going, their next meeting is July 15th. So that's, they could be subpoenaing people in the meantime. My ability to represent anybody individually is limited because I represent the board as a whole. So that means the board needs to consider seriously whether you want to retain outside counsel. And my recommendation would be to get someone very good in criminal law. This is a criminal grand jury. So they will be best in place to meet with you and prepare you for how to handle a criminal grand jury investigation. So I do not have criminal background at all.
Well, it was brought up to us too at our superintendent meeting that Mr. Gibbs may get a subpoena as well. So then that would limit his ability to even prepare anybody, so.
Yeah, no,
I think we need to, and there are some really good local criminal attorneys. We can stay local. I think that'd be great. We don't have to pay travel.
That would be my recommendation as well, just because they're here. If something comes up, they can be over here quickly to meet with people that get
We need to
subpoenaed.
interview them. Not just pick somebody. We need to interview
so,
them.
So you want me to set a
so.
special date, like interview session? Anybody interested in submitting resume?
yep.
Great.
Agree.
All right, and just a note on this week, we had a mediation with GVH. It did not finish, but we have a subsequent telephone conference next week to go with them.
We already-
It was,
Very positive.
it was 5.5 hours overall that we were there with them. We thought we had resolved, but at the last minute, something came up that kind of put a stop on it that day. But we are meeting I think I was a little skeptical going in that anything would come and it would be fruitful, but it was very proactive and it was very collaborative. I would say that they brought in a new representative, so Ms. Sukanik, who has come before the board and been a little bit divisive, is no longer in the picture as far as their dealings with us. So the new person they just hired seems to be very open to getting things done and getting on the right foot with the school board. So I'm optimistic that something will come out of this without having to go to litigation. I just wanted to update you guys on that, and that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Okay, now we will move forward with the Silver River Museum expansion with Mr. Scott Mitchell.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Dr. Mayor, school board members, Ms. Prespino, Mr. Gibbs. My name's Scott Mitchell. I work with the Silver River Museum. I'm a school board employee. I'm a program specialist there. I was hired in 2004. Previous to coming to Marion County Schools, I worked for the Florida Museum of Natural History at University of Florida. The reason I bring that up is it's pertinent to my presentation this morning. This morning I'm going to be talking about a new exhibit that we are bringing to the Silver River Museum. It is all about Native American dugout canoes. So the purpose of today's presentation is to provide information about the Silver River Museum because we do a lot out there, and frankly, we're out in the woods. So I want to make sure that everyone knows how great of a feather in the cap of the school board and the Park Service that facility is. I want to share information about the new dugout canoe exhibit with the board members and answer any questions that may come up from today's presentation. So first, I'd like to give you some background about the Silver River Museum. Like I said, I think most people know about us, but we are out in the state park. And we kind of straddle the fence where Monday through Friday we see students, so we're not open to the public during the school year. The public comes out on the weekends, so we kind of wear two hats. We're not like normal museums where we market ourselves and we're trying to bring in as many people as possible, because frankly, Monday through Friday, we've got kids there, we shoo people away. So the museum opened in 1991, and it was actually the brainchild of Guy Marwick, who was at that time, well, in 1987, he got clearance from the superintendent at that time to pursue an idea to build a museum and an environmental education center. And to make a long story short, he single-handedly garnered enough support and funds, private funds, and some state funds, that the museum opened in 1991. And at that time, it was just the front room of the museum in the classroom building. Later, it grew. So it's located in the Silver Spring State Park, and it is a partnership between Marion County Public Schools and the Florida Park Service, which is it's a program of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. That's the managing agency for the Florida Park Service. We are staffed with 4 full-time school board employees, including myself. We have a clerk, we have a resource teacher, and we have a very industrious gentleman that wears 2 hats. He is our bus driver. Well, he wears 3. Custodian and minor maintenance, Mr. Cotton. He stays very busy. So we have 4 full-time employees. We have about 30 screened and trained volunteers. And then we also raise money through fundraising to hire on another 4 part-time employees to handle extra students. And those folks are paid docents, boat captains, because we operate a tour boat on the river for the students. So we have 8 employees, but only 4 are school board, paid for through the school board. So our educational programs include things like Ocala Country Days that has been running for years. These are annual events, and they serve several purposes. We bring in about 11 to 1,200 students a day for school field trips during these big events. Like Ocala Days, we'll see students for 3 days. We'll see 1,200 kids a day. And in fact, Mrs. Thrower will attest to this, we see the entire student population of Hillcrest. That's the only field trip that they take annually as a school. And we help them to do that, and it's a great experience for those students because there's a lot of hands-on activities. And we also house a professional collection for the professional library, all the books, mainly science and history and social studies. And we conduct educational outreach to schools. We also run Camp Kiwanis. I left that off the slide, but we're about halfway through that right now. As I stated earlier, the museum is open to the public on weekends and holidays. And our real bread and butter, the way that we earn our keep with the school system, is that we see all 4th and 5th grade students each year for field trips in social studies and science. So the classroom teachers bring their classes to the museum. And so respectively, 4th graders are learning Florida history, 5th graders are learning science. We have a resource teacher that works with those classroom teachers that bring their students to the museum. And collectively, with the students we see during field trips and special events, it's well over 10,000 students a year, each year. And we get a new crop of 4th and 5th graders each year. So studies have actually shown, exit surveys with visitors at major museums across the country overwhelmingly show when people come out of museums and they're asked the question, did you go to museums when you were a child? Did your family take you to a museum when you were a kid? 80–90% of respondents say yes. So just the fact of getting kids in a museum in 4th and 5th grade sets them up through the rest of their adulthood. They'll bring their kids to museums probably. And museums are like libraries, but instead of books, we have cool stuff, okay? And every city you go to has a museum on just about anything you can think of. This is an image of the main gallery there in the front room of the museum. And that's actually a Columbian mammoth skeleton. We find their fossils in the Silver River occasionally. So you'll see, if you look closely, there are some numbers on the exhibits. You can see a 5 at the base of the Columbian mammoth. Those are tied to worksheets that the students work on when they're in the museum. The 4th graders, as I said, study Florida history. So the image to the left are some 4th graders immersed in Florida history. They're in a pioneer cabin. This is one of our docents. lady named Mo Driggers, and she is dressed up as a pioneer from about 1890s. She's going through a lesson with the students. On the right, we have students on our tour boat, which is a Coast Guard certified licensed tour boat. We have Coast Guard licensed captains that operate it, and they get an eco tour on the Silver River as part of their science field trip. We have every class of fifth graders, students who have never been on a boat before. That's another thing. I can't remember the first time I was on a boat. I grew up in South Florida. So if you're a fourth grader or a fifth grader in Marion County, you're going to get to go to a museum and you're going to get to ride a boat before you get out of elementary school. So that's a good background on the museum. For the canoe exhibit, as I said before I came to the museum, I worked up at the University of Florida at the museum, and I worked to help take care of archaeological collections. And I did outreach to schools and various other museums, and I came down and found out about the job, and Guy Marwick told me he was retiring, and I applied for the job, and that's how I ended up here. So I've maintained close contact with all my colleagues at the museum in Gainesville. It's the State Natural History Museum, so we work closely with them. Last year, I received a call from one of my colleagues that said, hey, the canoe exhibit's coming offline. It's a traveling exhibit. We're going to have to dismantle it. Do you think that the Silver River might want some of the components? And by components, I mean freestanding display pieces. So this exhibit is designed to travel in 2 semi-trucks. And she sent me some images, and I'll get into the rest of the story later, but we didn't have room for components. The components are too large, and the Silver River Museum is already pretty well built out. I asked for the whole thing, if I could get an exhibit space to display it. So the canoe exhibit explores Native American canoes from the Americas, and that includes North, Central, and South America. There's a heavy focus on Florida, though, because the Noonan's Lake site, in 2000, a high school teacher from Alachua County Schools had their environmental education students out tromping around the banks of Noonan's Lake during the drought looking for logs from an old sawmill on the north side of the lake. And guess what they found? They found 101 prehistoric Indian canoes that had been exposed during the drought. It's the largest find of its kind in the world. Those canoes and canoe fragments, when they radiocarbon dated them, they dated from between 500 years ago and 5,000 years ago. So there were generations, literally hundreds of generations, of Native American canoes. It was one of the largest finds in recent history, certainly the largest of its kind. The museum at Gainesville was inspired to create and build an exhibit featuring canoes. Like I said, there was a heavy focus on Florida, but they branched out, and there's canoes from the northwest coast, British Columbia, all the way to Amazonia. So the exhibit really is about the Americas, but it's focused on Florida. It arrives finished and ready to display. The folks in Gainesville will come help us unpack it. It's like this big fold-out display with these kiosks, these islands, these displays. So there's no real work involved other than setting it up. It toured from 2013 to 2018 all over the eastern United States. Other museums paid $55,000 for a 3-month rental fee, and then they would charge admission. It was retired last year, and that's when it was offered to us. The folks in Gainesville really didn't want to disassemble it. They had limited storage. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so it's not only a neat exhibit, it's a great story, but for a school district and for an educational museum like ours that sees 10,000 plus students a year, it's a great opportunity. It is heavily, heavily themed on science and social studies, and these are easily correlated to standards, and it's suitable for kindergartners right up to high school seniors. There are lots of hands-on activities. There are interactive video screens. There are microscopes that students can look through to identify prehistoric wood samples from archaeological sites. There's lots of hands-on activities. It's bilingual because it was made to tour. So the exhibit text, the interpretive text, is offered in English and Spanish. There's an educator guide that accompanies the exhibit. And the museum folks up at University of Florida will actually come down and help train our staff how to best interpret the exhibit to students and visiting teachers. So there's a lot of educational value there. Okay, so why the museum? Why us? Why Gainesville? Or why Ocala? Why is it coming from Gainesville to Ocala? I used to work there. I know those folks. They offered it to us. They knew that we were seeing a lot of students. They want to maximize their outreach efforts. We do have a handout, a couple of handouts there. Thank you, Mrs. Beck. So the canoe exhibit's a unique opportunity first for our students, but it's also a great opportunity for the community. So you should be getting a copy of the lease agreement between the school system and the DEP. And this is just background for the board members about how the Silver River Museum operates. Guy Marwick, like I said, was the first director out there. He launched it. When he did, they crafted and negotiated this lease. It's a 45-year lease, so it's good until 2040. It automatically renews. There's also an email handout, which is approval for this idea, this expansion from the DEP. So on the lease, the first tab will show you that it's a 45-year lease term, automatically renewable. And I can tell you the DEP loves having the school board facility out there. We're a feather in their cap, just like the museum is a feather in the school board's cap. We bring in lots of visitors. The museum's open to the public on the weekends. It makes the Park Service look great. The second tab on the lease talks specifically about additions. And what we're proposing to do is add a new exhibit building, or not an exhibit building, excuse me, an exhibit room onto the museum building. We want to add exhibit space to bring this entire canoe exhibit in. It's too big for us to accept pieces of it. We want to display the entire thing. We want to build a room to do it. So that second tab in the lease will say, to paraphrase, we're the subleasees. We can make additions as long as they're approved by the DEP. That's the email you have. They're professionally designed. They meet local permitting. What else is in there? I don't have a copy of the lease in front of me.
Just, don't we, if the lease is broken, the state keeps the building, but we keep the contents, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, and not necessarily if the lease is broken. I guess technically if the lease is broken, but if the school system decided
Thank you.
to vacate, obviously we can't take site-built buildings, slabs and bricks and mortar. The buildings technically are property of the state because they're site-built. So what Dr. Mayer is referring to is all of the contents in the museum belong to the school board. The bricks and the mortar, the buildings that are set on slabs belong to the state. Those buildings are built with private money, though. They're not built with school board money. So if the school board ever pulls out, they're not out of the money that they spent to build those buildings. So looking at the lease, development and placement improvements, it's allowed. We have to pay for it. They want the plans prepared by professional designers, require advance approval, and comply with zoning and code requirements. So we can easily meet those criteria. There is a past precedent. So the first bullet point here, a quick and easy one to think about is the Silver Spring School, the little one-room schoolhouse that Mr. James went to. That was an easy project because we just moved it in and set it up and restored it. But the library building, let me back up one step. So when Guy Marwick first built the museum, he built the front room of the museum and the classroom building. Later, the back wing, the history wing, was added. That was added in 1999 with private funds. The library building, which houses 3 offices and our professional library collections, that was added in 1995 with private funds. So there's a precedent for slowly, when it's appropriate, to expand the museum as long as we have funding and we have a good reason for it. So this is not a brand new concept we've come up with. The folks in Gainesville at the Florida Museum agreed to waive all rental fees. We basically get the exhibit for free. They're happy to have it here. They're happy to have thousands of school kids seeing it. They've agreed to a 10-year minimum exhibition because we said, hey, if we go to all the trouble to do this, we don't want you to ask for it back in 2 years. So minimum 10-year exhibition. with the option to renew, or it could go back to UF or somewhere else after that, and we would have that space. We could use it for other exhibits, meetings, classrooms. The Felburn Foundation, who Guy Marwick, when he retired in 2004, he later went on to head the Felburn Foundation, which is a local charitable foundation. And for obvious reasons, he has been an ardent supporter of the Silver River Museum and of Marion County Schools. The Felburn Foundation helps support STEM education, the STEM Fair, Vanguard, various programs. Since I have been at the museum in 2004, I've received $913,000 in grants and donations. Out of that $913,000, $886,000 has come from the Felburn Foundation. So Guy Marwick, just since I've been there, has donated, the Felburn Foundation under his leadership has donated close to $900,000. Before that, they built the library and they built the history wing. So they have some skin in the game. Felburn Foundation has donated $350,000 to design and build this addition. That money has been received and it's being administered by the Public Education Foundation. We have a local provider who has donated storage space. I think this came up a few meetings back. It's Innovel Solutions, which is a warehouse west of the interstate and south of State Road 40. People will say it's the old Kmart warehouse. Well, it's the old Kmart Southeastern Distribution Center, but to make things easy, we just refer to it as Innovel Solutions. That's the agency that manages it now. I toured the facility. Well, let me back up one step. When they donated it, we were in a bit of a pickle because we wanted to bring the museum exhibit here. We had to bring it here to store it because UF didn't want to store it, but we didn't have the building built. So, make a long story short, Innovel has donated storage space. It's a 1.9 million square foot warehouse that is air conditioned, that has security cameras. It's active. There's trucks coming and going. They have lots of other clients. I think they handle Sears. They've got racks and racks and racks of things that go offshore. There's automated conveyor belts going all over the place. It's actually quite a busy place, but they did find us room. So they're storing the exhibit for free. They're not charging us anything. So we have, the building is paid for. We have storage covered until the building is built. Part of that $886,000 that we've received from the Felburn Foundation was $400,000 to augment an endowment account that was established to help support the museum. That's being administered over at Community Bank and Trust. It's invested with board-approved investment guidelines. Teresa Bosnell has helped us with those years ago. And it's tracked and audited by our finance. Alice Posada keeps track of it. So it's all above board. We are able to spend the interest, not the principal. So we did pay for shipping from the last venue to Ocala, which was from Memphis, Tennessee, was the last venue. It came in 2 semi-trucks. One of them had to be refrigerated. Bottom line is we spent $11,612 to bring the exhibit down to have it stored at Innovel. Kevin Sheely with the Ocala Marion County CEP helped us to line up the Innovel Solutions storage. We actually had a second warehouse step up and wanted to volunteer space, but we had already started talking with Innovel. The exhibit contents are insured by the school system while in storage. Mrs. Beck has a document from Ms. Lively's office, risk management. And Ms. Lively absorbed a prorated premium to add these items under the policy of the rest of the material at the museum. I think it was $600 and something. That's in a slide coming up. Future premiums will be paid from the Silver River Museum endowment account, so that won't cost the board any money either. But that comes up in a slide here as we move along. So we have a free exhibit that's literally a world-class exhibit produced by UF. It'll be great for our students. It's going to be great for the community. We've got free storage. We've got the interest from the endowment account to take care of incidentals like insurance premiums, which won't be much in the big picture. These are some images of the exhibit components in previous museums. So I think this one is from Chickasaw Cultural Center in Arkansas. And that's a complete prehistoric dugout canoe from North Florida. And you can see these kiosks, if you will. They break down, and those are the things that travel in the trucks. So the exhibit designers, when it's ready to be displayed, will come and actually set this up for us. And in fact, Innovel even offered as part of their donation, they said, when you have the building built, we'll bring the stuff over in trucks for you. You won't have to worry about that. These are canoe paddles, Native American canoe paddles from North, Central, and South America. You can see in the background the boy working on designing his own canoe paddle there. That's one of the little hands-on stations. So this is yet another little freestanding kiosk. That's one of the microscopes on the left that I mentioned earlier. And those are little wood blocks next to it. Those are samples of prehistoric wood from archaeological sites. Here you can see on the right a close-up where these are some of the hands-on activities. There's interpretive video and text. So it was designed for educational purposes. So our project timeline, like I said earlier, we've received the funding from the Felburn Foundation. We have preliminary architectural plans being reviewed by the DEP. We hope for final approval within a week or two. After that, we'd like to apply for permits with Marion County. We think that's probably a 4 to 5 week period process. If this all goes well, as planned, we would hope to have construction started sometime in August, hopefully be done by the end of the year, be done by the end of December, and we would have a projected exhibit opening of 2020. So these are artist renderings of the addition itself. And as you walk up to the front room of the museum, in the top slide, the very left side of the top image is the end of that front part of the museum as you walk up to the museum. The addition would be built out to the right of that, kind of where the little turtle pond is, if you're familiar with that. And the top slide is you're looking at it from the south. The bottom slide is you're looking at it from the north. This is the back side on the bottom. Now that little gable end that sticks out is noteworthy because those are indoor restrooms. And we don't have indoor restrooms for students in the museum. When students or the public have to use the restroom, they have to walk out of the museum, go down the breezeway, down the sidewalk to the classroom building by the water fountain. That's where the restrooms are. That's a problem when you have a bunch of kids in the museum because then you have to send them in buddy pairs and the teachers watch in or they walk them down. So it kind of disrupts things. So having indoor restrooms is a huge asset. That's another part of the project that's just kind of icing on the cake. It's about 2,400 square feet of exhibit space and it adds restrooms. That's a great thing. All right, now, to get to the meat of the issue, money, right? In red, these are costs that the school system will incur. I think we can all agree that they're minimal, and they're certainly worth what we're getting. So annual building, maintenance, and utilities, school system provides maintenance and pays the utility bills for the Silver River Museum. So in the big picture, adding a 2,400 square foot addition is going to increase the utilities a bit. And as the years go on and things start to fail, it needs a new air handler or something like that, down the road there will be some maintenance costs simply because the school board provides those. It's difficult to put a cost on it. We know that it will happen. I think in the short term, it's going to be minimal. It's going to increase our electric bill just a little bit. And with time, we'll have some maintenance involved. But again, it's a 2,400 square foot addition, so it's not a major deal. The second row down, like I said, Miss Lively did absorb $646. She tacked on the canoe exhibit onto the insurance policy for the museum contents, and she went ahead and absorbed that $646 for the 18-19 school year. If you go down to the next row, we're projecting out next year, it'll be $1,300 annual insurance premium for the exhibit contents. It's about $1 million exhibit. And that will be paid for with interest from the museum endowment account, so that's no cost to the district. Belvern Foundation has donated $350,000 to design and build the exhibit wing. The Silver River Museum endowment account has paid for the shipping. That was $11,612. Innovel is donating the exhibit storage. The museum is donating exhibit rental fees. Florida Museum will help with exhibit setup. And incidentally, at $55,000, at a 10-year exhibition is $2.2 million. If they were renting it like they normally would, a 10-year rental, that'd be $2.2 million. So these are the agencies that are involved, our partners, if you will. Certainly the museum, the school system, the Felburn Foundation, Florida Museum, Innovel, and the Park Service. And with that, I would like to try to answer any questions, provide more information in areas that I may have not given you enough.
Have any questions?
No, it sounds absolutely wonderful. Let's move forward. I'm assuming, does this have to come before the board for approval? Is it?
Well, yeah, I'm working on all those agreements now. I just
Okay.
got the UF agreement this week, and we're redlining
All right,
it.
so we can get it done as quickly as possible, so we
By the UF contract they sent over, this week, it has to be open for the public by September of 2021.
We can do that.
fabulous, exciting.
Ms. Stacy?
I want to take this time right now to talk about how fortunate we are to have this museum in the first place.
Thank you.
I've been going there since my kids were in elementary school, and these kids are in the 30s now. And I was out there since I've been on the board a couple of times, and it's just come so far. I couldn't believe it. And so while we're on this topic, I've been waiting for a time to bring this subject up, Dr. Mayer, for a long time, and you probably have wondered how we could talk about it also with the board. And this is a good opening. We have a gentleman here, I'm not going to say his last name, I'll say Rob, who is the cartoonist.
Oh.
Okay. He is an absolute he's on he belongs to the Historical Society here and everything. And he is an absolute history buff like I have never met in my life. He is an absolute expert on Florida history and Marion County history. And Dr. Mayer, I know we have, textbook dollars, curriculum dollars and stuff like this. Been trying to figure out a way to get everybody in on this conversation for about 4 years.
He and I have already met.
Exactly.
And he is putting together a package, and I ran into him, there was some event.
No, he's been trying to help us. He's been trying to help us.
And he's putting together bits and pieces to bring it back to the table for us to have more discussion.
I think this would be a major thing because we've got all these elementary children going to the museum. It would be so wonderful if we could give them a coloring book, cartoon coloring book, and he's fabulous, with information, elementary style, about even Marion County history, like have a little Florida history section, and a very specific Marion County history about stuff in our area, and he's very much about the environment and the Indians and everything. For our children to, I know we'd have, because I never knew how we could fund it, but Dr. Mayer, you can probably work that miracle through our textbook dollars or something, because it would be a valuable history thing that those elementary children could take that to their classroom, and as they're coloring the pictures, the teacher could speak with them about, okay, this is about what happened in Marion County. Because when this man passes on, he's retired, when he goes away, the amount of information in his mind and history in his mind is going to go away with him. And anyone that knows him knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, Dr. Mayer, thanks for talking to him. He told me he had talked to you.
Yeah.
And so can we kind of move on this, like, with us I mean,
Well,
we're all
yes,
on the
ma'am,
same
I'm wait-
page.
Actually, when we followed up, I kind of pushed in because I'm waiting for him to.
And he's a little hard to,
Well, yeah, well, he's an artist.
He's-
I get it.
so he's got all that, he's got all
It's in
that
his
artsy
DNA.
stuff.
He knows-
It's in his DNA, like we talk about
Yeah.
DNAs.
He has my cell phone. He knows the door's open. I'm waiting.
Well, I think he's been trying to do it so many ways that he didn't know, but I think now he has a beeline into
little
you,
push,
and we'll
yeah.
give him a little push. Thank
I
you.
would like to have him meet with our resource teacher to have the coloring book theme, and I know the gentleman, and he actually is at the
He's
museum and
fabulous.
helps, and he comes to State Park.
He's
events.
everywhere.
I'd like to have our resource teacher, Aaron Benavides, meet with him to make sure the subject matter is linked to standards, which would be easy.
That would be perfect. He's even talked to us about that.
And the museum, with our private fundraising, we could probably step up and take care of what it would take to alleviate the district, because I know that there's a lot of large issues at hand for the district to solve financially. The museum could raise some money, and we could start that conversation with him and work on that, and I could get back to you. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I would like to incorporate the canoe part of the exhibit into
He would love it.
the.
He won't even sleep. He'll do this in like 24 hours. because
He would
will
give
not
us
go to
rights
sleep.
as well. He
He's
would
so
give the
excited.
school board rights, and it could be on the museum's webpage. So private schools, home schools, charter schools, out-of-county schools, they could download it. Classroom teachers could download it from the museum webpage for their classroom use.
What
It
a-
wouldn't even have
what
to
a
be exclusively for Marion County
Fabulous.
students.
One more link to the Silver River
It's a
Museum,
good idea.
that children can have coloring books, and then they can talk about what they're coloring in class.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments?
I'm excited.
Great, I'm excited.
I have a comment and just a couple of quick questions. First of all, hats off to you and your team at the Silver River Museum and how it's grown in the park. I remember when we used to have to portage our kayaks all the way down the river trail to make it to the boat ramp, and so we're always glad to get in the water after that. And this is just another example, and it's very uplifting of the local, public, private, philanthropic collaborations that are occurring. It reminds me of the MTC Special Needs Shelter conversation of first thing this morning. It's really dynamic, and that's great. My questions, could this be like a rotating exhibit where another museum might want the canoes and then we could bring something else in?
Yes, ma'am. At the end of that 10-year exhibition, with the amount of work to get it up in
Up and
place,
move 'em.
we'd like to leave it in place for 10 years.
Okay.
After that point, it will be up to the school board and to the Florida Museum up at UF to decide where it goes next. It's too far down the road, and the decisions have to be made by other people. I would be surprised if they dismantled it at that time. I'd be surprised if they did. It may happen, but I would suspect that it would probably at that point go to another museum. I think that they were at a crossroads and they weren't getting the rentals. They didn't have space to store it, and that's why they turned to us. At the end of a 10-year period, it will have been on display at the Silver River Museum, and I would be surprised if somebody else didn't want it. If they don't want it, we may keep it longer. That'll be negotiable, or they may want it back, and at that point, that space could be used for other purposes.
Right, okay, thank you for that
Yes, ma'am.
clarification. And then I expect that the indoor bathrooms, they, of course, would be ADA compliant?
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
There's a janitor's closet, and there's water fountains as well.
okay,
And I believe they designed the janitor's closet so that at a later date, that could be converted to a family restroom if the need was there.
great. Checking all the boxes. And then my last question is, hopefully there's some innovative technologies being considered to make the building as environmentally friendly and also as low maintenance as possible.
Yes, ma'am. It's the same building materials, color scheme as the rest of the museum.
Yes, I noticed
And
that.
for any of you who know Guy Marwick, he is a staunch environmentalist, which is a good thing. So the building is sited to minimize impact to trees. It's concrete block construction with hardy board exterior siding and the standing seam metal roof, so the same as the rest of the construction. The interior it'll look a lot like the back room of the museum. There will be some skylight windows up high, carpet tiles, and then painted drywall interior with LED lighting throughout, which is important for exhibits because that doesn't create UV, which fades exhibits. and it's also expensive. It lowers your electrical bill, and you don't have to replace the light bulbs as often. So we've actually converted the entire museum to LED lighting with a grant from the Felburn Foundation, by the way.
There we go again. All right, great. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for a terrific presentation, and we look forward to seeing this on our agenda in a couple.
Well, we're excited to be doing it.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we really have the right person in place here.
Oh, I have a great team at the museum, Mrs. Stacy. Here's the proof. I leave for
so
5 weeks and I
welcome.
go to Camp Kiwanis, and I'm not around hardly at all, and they run the museum summer camp. Judy Evans does a fantastic job. She's our clerk out there. She works
We
tirelessly.
loved Judy when she was here.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
We
so,
missed her.
so the secret weapon is having a great staff, because I can leave for 5 weeks and go out to the National Forest, and everything runs perfectly at the museum. There's
But
no
if you're
problem.
not a good leader, you're not going to have excellent staff.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for all you do out
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you all.
And you're headed back to Camp Kiwanis now.
Yes, ma'am.
I was surprised this morning to recognize you when you came in the suit. How are things going out there? Can you just give a,
Going very well. We had, our capacity is 104 campers.
uh-huh,
We had 98 last week. We had 102 this week.
great.
Roughly a quarter of those are on scholarship that the Kiwanis Club provides, which is important. Our guidance counselors choose those students who have the most need. We've had no major problems. A lot of times when it's storming in town, it's not necessarily storming out there. So we haven't had, but I think a couple of instances where the campers have had to be inside the cabins because of lightning, just minimal. And so not to use a cliche, but we have a lot of happy campers. It's
Go ahead.
going well,
Great,
going
great.
well.
Thank you, sir. Have a
Thank you all very much.
Is there any public comment? We need to take a short break.
Good morning, everybody. Chris Altabello, 2020 Northeast 43rd Street, Ocala. I'm not here representing MEA or MESP. I'm here as a parent and as an educator. And as an educator, when I first came over 20 years ago, anything that Guy Marwick's name's attached to ought to be consent agenda'd, pretty much in my mind. As a science teacher, the best professional development I ever had was out at the museum. And Scott, I hope that this will present an opportunity for our science teachers, as one who still holds a certificate, for professional development to incorporate this wonderful new exhibit. I'm so glad to hear this. But Scott, I want you to know I'm here to also give a shout out to, as a parent, for the Silver River summer camps. I don't know what exactly it's called. I have twins that don't like to go to camp, but mom and dad need them to go to camp over the summer, right? Certainly my wife. So we enrolled them this year, and they really didn't want to go, but we said you have no choice. And Scott, I'm here to tell you that it was the best week of camp they had a couple of weeks ago. The Dickens Sheets, I think, were doing it, and every day my son's like, we got to get there early. We got to get there early. You know, don't pick us up until the end. And they were probably the last ones that were there. But kudos to the staff there, and I'm looking forward to it. The downside is that my kids are leaving elementary school this year, so they're not going to be part of this 4th and 5th grade thing anymore, but we'll get them out there. But let's publicize this. Let's go big and bold with this and let other counties be jealous of us for this. So Scott, continue to do the great work that you're doing out there, and I look forward to going out there when it grand opens or whatever, and look forward to always seeing what Guy's up to. So thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Seeing none, okay, we're gonna take a very quick break and then come back.
one point in time.
Okay, we are back in session, and we will be discussing health insurance update with Miss Lori Lively.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board
morning.
members, Dr. Mayor, Ms. Prestipino, and Mr. Gibbs. So today we're here for a follow-up to the conversation we had a few work sessions ago regarding the health plan renewal and decisions that you're faced with to make regarding that. Thomas Buss, our servicing agent, is going to come up and kind of revisit everything we've talked about previously, update you on some other things that have happened with claims, as well as the conversation we had along with Ms. McCall with the community members regarding the hospital matter. I did want to say, it's not my intent to rush anybody into a decision or anything like that, but I do want to make the point that if we move to this HMO, there is an enormous amount of behind-the-scenes things that have to be put in place to make this happen in order for it to hopefully roll out smoothly in time for enrollment. There's many moving parts, not just dependent on us. We have vendors, we have the online platform, all of that has to come together, and it's something we've never done before, and it's going to be very new for us, as well as the education piece for the employees. So if you're comfortable today, the goal would be hopefully that we could have consensus on the two issues I believe that we have pending, which is which plan are you comfortable with moving forward with, and whether or not you would pick up just Plan 1 or pick up the cost across the board. As it is, that would take us to, I believe, the July 23rd meeting as a formal vote to move that forward. So time is ticking for us, and there are some concerns surrounding that. I'm going to go ahead and let Thomas speak, and I believe afterwards, when we're done with that, we're just going to do a little brief update on the topic of the breast cancer that we discussed previously as well. Thank you.
Madam Chair, good morning, board members, Dr. Mayor, Ms. Prestipino, Mr. Gibbs. Thank you all for having us back today. To follow the canoe presentation, I wish I had gone first. However, we do have a tidbit of good news for you today. We've got some updates as you requested last workshop, and we do, as Lori mentioned, want to make an effort today to come to answering all your questions so you feel comfortable making a decision in the best interest of the district relative to the health insurance program. First and foremost, one of the most comprehensive line items this year that we've been focused on is the Advent Health market adjustment based on their contractual request of Florida Blue. We had a successful coalition meeting this week with representatives from the school district. Thank you, Ms. McCall, for attending. Leadership from the county, the city, as well as the hospital district at the county administrator's office. It was I would offer a proactive, productive conversation. The community all is in agreement that this is a major issue that we need to allow Florida Blue and Advent to work through together. However, with a grassroots initiative, make sure that we support and back this 110% at the appropriate time. The first bit of good news is that with the efforts that have been put forth so far, we've been made aware that Florida Blue and Advent have re-entered into contractual discussions. They have committed, they being Florida Blue, that we will receive an update as Marion County Public Schools as to the progression and hopeful conclusion of that contract discussion with Advent within the next 15 days, and that was as of last week. So we know that this is time sensitive for you. We know that that is a variable that you all need a definitive answer on. However, I don't have formal verification yet as to where that will land. However, we believe, based on that next step, that will head in the right direction, and we are still hopeful that Advent Health and Florida Blue will come to terms in that contract discussion to where we will see hopefully some form. Again, I don't have a number, I don't have a figure that I can confirm for today's consideration that would reduce that 5.1% factor specific to Marion County Public Schools experience that we looked at last time relative to a $2.238 million cost in 2020. So we believe that this is a process that is moving forward. We believe that it is a process that hopefully will have a good solution for the better of the total cost for Marion schools at this time. Mrs. McCall, did you want to add anything for the meeting this week?
No, I think that everybody around the table understands that the rates that the hospital prior to Advent Health coming in had been very low, and the margins for the hospital were very, very slight. In fact, at times in a negative. So there's no doubt that the rates need to increase for Advent. The question is we are not Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, so our cost of living and our demographics is very different than that. So that was one of our concerns. And the hospital district is requiring Advent Health to do capital projects, which will benefit the health of our community. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So as it was pointed out by the hospital trustees, and I used to have a CEO that said no money, no mission. It's not that a not-for-profit hospital should not make money, because they should make money. The difference is that a not-for-profit hospital's profits go back into the hospital. So that concept of they're a not-for-profit hospital. So everybody agrees we want Advent to be successful, and so we understand that there does need to be some type of an impact. The other thing that we may address, depending on how these negotiations go, is possibly phasing it in over a certain amount of time rather than just the initial hit. So all of that to be determined, but it was a very positive meeting, and next steps will be determined as a grassroots effort based on the outcome of Advent and Florida Blue renegotiating.
Ms. McCall, thank you for the additional comments. So as a reminder, the two factors, one, the largest being the Advent Health factor of 5.1% relative to your renewal next year. The second being the Affordable Care Act's health insurer tax at 2.7% as it relates to your renewal this year. Remember, that discussion was now at a federal level. That's not as much a grassroots conversation for us here locally. However, the other challenge at hand is that in the past has been repealed, but has typically not been repealed by the feds any sooner than the 1st of October. So as we look to making decisions, I understand that the challenge in today's discussion is we don't have formal confirmation as to how either of those factors may adjust. However, we do want to present to you the fact that Florida Blue has recommitted that any adjustment off of either of those factors that does occur prior to the 1st of 2020 will reduce Marion County Public Schools rates to whatever percentage effect that may be for obviously the end result of the school district's budget. Okay. Any questions to those subjects?
Now, I'd like to say one thing, though. When we sold the hospital, wasn't it about a $60 million deal or something to save money, and now we're going to pay $60 million after all? When we sold the hospital, it was all about looking at saving $60 million that the county would have to pay. It looks like now, in a different way, we're paying it. That's all I want to, it's interesting how it comes back to bite us.
I would offer that Marion County, based on demand and healthcare need, needs both hospitals to be successful.
No, I mean, when we sold, when we
financially-
had it Monroe under the county,
Yes, ma'am.
and we wanted to save money, but we're not saving that money now. So our whole goal when we voted to sell the hospital was to save, basically had that big $60 million. But now we're getting the $60 million anyway. Are you following me, Beth?
Yeah, well, the trustees have $64 million from the sale, so.
To my point, we need them both to be successful. Your financial point is well taken. I would also offer that.
Historical comment.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's important to remind the board that Advent Health is the only acute care facility in Marion County that delivers babies. Ocala Health does not provide that service, so financially it is a challenge. But on the other side of the coin, Ms. Stacy, I think there are equal opportunities to ensure that both the hospital be financially sustainable while we still, to Ms. McCall's comment
It's an
about
excellent hospital.
economically, we still appropriately suggest from budget perspectives for all municipalities, for all citizens of Marion County, that they have an opportunity not for this maybe to be a one-time effect to their bottom lines is really what we're fighting for, is to allow this to be a consideration over time.
It is a great hospital. We've experienced, ever since they sold, we've been in it. The last adventure at Advent was an excellent situation, so we do have a great hospital in them. I do agree with that.
We do. We're fortunate to have two very good hospital systems in Marion County, and we will continue to update risk management to any additional market knowledge that we're made aware of, particularly the first and foremost being that 15-day time frame that Florida Blues will report back to us on for next steps. Okay. We were, based on last board workshop, able to receive from Florida Blue an additional month of claims update. How has your group performed over an additional 30-day period in 2019? So claims through May, I just wanted to provide for your information. We did see a continuation of the three categories of claims trend that I brought to your attention at the last workshop relative to specialty care and pharmaceutical care, potentially with a cancer directive as a multitude of those high-cost claimants that we're watching in that utilization. However, with that additional claims information, we also re-requested Florida Blues Underwriting to rerun your renewal. Overall, remember, we started at over 24%. Florida Blue invested, and we are now at 19.6% overall for your current schedule of benefits across the 4 plans. With the May claims, the revised renewal has now presented at 19.19%. So though we're still seeing a trend of claims, that's one that we're watching, that's not coming down, your trend is continuing to go up. Because we reduce 1 month of annualized trend that Florida Blue applies in that formula each month in that look. It's not a home run. However, it is a reduction from 19.6 to, let's call it, 19.2. So maybe just over $100,000 less in annualized premiums as we move forward. So now the number in your mind as you look to this slide, where we had the no benefit change consideration to the board as we get into the financials to this discussion, that 19.6, and again, this information was just made aware to us from Florida Blue about 2 days ago, so I'm sorry that the slides were not updated. However, that 19.6 at the top now in your mind have as 19.2. So as we come to discussion for today, and again, Mrs. Thrower, we do have some updated information, as Ms. Lively mentioned. Laurel Lingle, who's the wellness coordinator of our office, has done some deeper dives into the mammogram discussion and breast cancer discussion that we do want to present to you. But I do want to address the meat and potatoes to this discussion first, but allow Laurel to have an opportunity to make sure we update you to that effect and share some other wellness initiatives that we plan to offer throughout the year at the end. Okay. So we go back to, if you'll recall, the different matrix options where we represent, to just remind you of the formula here. On the left column, you see the $35.5 million in your current annual cost. We look at the 2 columns to the right, where if the board were to consider an increase, funding the increase for just the current free or board-paid Plan 1 only for single coverage, as compared to the board picking up the increased premium across all 4 plans equitably across the matrix. You see the 6.4 and the $7.8 million numbers. That is staying as is. All current benefits remain the same at 19.2. Obviously, those numbers would adjust very, very moderately down based on the 19.2 increase now rerun. Again, the employee share, as it would change then based on the determination and the pleasure of the board, also to factor in the COBRA, retiree, FMLA population, and your total line item cost for health insurance across all of those factors at the very bottom. So that is where we are today, 4 plans. If you'll recall this portfolio, all PPO plans, 1 through 4. That is this slide and its end result, 19.2%. I'll remind you, we discussed through the insurance committee, and we brought forth at the last workshop 3 alternate considerations for the board's review. The first being alternate A, which is the modification of Plan 1 from a PPO network to an HMO network. Plans 2, 3, and 4 remaining on that PPO network with no change in benefits. That end result, as you see, with the board picking up the free Plan 1 on an HMO platform of $3.3 million across all 4 plans if the board were to consider at $5.246 million. in this scenario. Alternate F was the second option brought through the insurance committee. This is where we would offer now a 5-plan portfolio. If you'll recall, we are now adding that HMO as the new board paid free plan as our Plan 1. We're also retaining the existing Plan 1 as the PPO network as a buy-up option to the employees, and Plans 2, 3, and 4 would remain as is, also on that PPO network. The end financial result to the board in this scenario at $3.3 million for Plan 1 only, $5.7 million for all 5 plans across the board. Lastly, Alternative G. This again was reviewed by the insurance committee, but is more of an illustrative purpose for the board to understand there were a multitude of scenarios considered. This was not an insurance committee recommendation necessarily, however, one that we felt warranted at least a review. This scenario, again, would take a 4-plan approach. Plan 1 being that same HMO with no change in benefits. Plans 2, 3, and 4 remaining as PPO. However, the rating methodology is what's called composite rated, or averaged across the 4 plans, and this represented an overall increase consistently product to product, where in the prior illustrations, Plan 1 was a lesser increase as compared to the other 3 or 4. So that resulted in a 4.5 million, almost 4.6 for the single plan increase to the board, or 6.1 million across all 4 plans. So again, the key subject matter, as Lori mentioned, for the board's consideration is a material change from a PPO network of local providers, statewide providers, national and international providers, as the PPO network offers today, to a changed HMO network where you have no out-of-network or out-of-state benefits, with the exception of emergency room care. The networks locally, as a reminder, are very, very comparable in Marion County. So an example in real life of, will my doctor accept the HMO if we were to consider this? Again, we would provide you with a percentage of all the providers in Marion County. Approximately 90% of them participate in network with the PPO network today. About 87% of that same provider population participates in network with the HMO. Other factors for consideration: each member would have to identify a primary care provider. It is an open access HMO, which means they do not have to get a referral from their PCP to go see a specialist. They can go at their discretion. However, a primary care physician needs to be identified by every member of the district as well as their dependents, if covered. Mayo Clinic, obviously a key provider that unfortunately several of our employees have used in the past. On the HMO is out of network. It's not a covered facility. Moffitt, however, is in the Tampa market. Authorization requirements. Think therapies were the examples I provided at the last workshop. If Thomas was going through the middle of physical therapy through the holidays, carries over past the 1st of 2020. I'm on Plan 1 today. The new Plan 1 becomes an HMO in 2020. It's within the realm of possibility that Thomas, in that therapy continuum of care, may have to resubmit for a new authorization with that same provider, in hopes that, 1, they're participating with the HMO, and 2, the authorization would have to be reapproved with the HMO. I'm just trying to outline for you, as Lori mentioned, this is a heavy lift, and the educational component of this change, January 1st, is one that our firm will gladly commit to with educational meetings, presentations, materials, in working with risk management to ensure through our online platform as well as face-to-face meetings that the population understands and has the opportunity to ask questions so that they're clear in what needs to be thought through ahead of time before they make a decision for January 1st. A reminder, the open enrollment period is in the month of October and carries over into the first part of November of each year. Our providers in our community have been very familiar with the school district having all PPO plans in the past. The other educational component to this discussion is every provider in Marion County now is going to have to understand that thousands of Marion County Public Schools employees may have an HMO. That's a new ID card. That may be new member numbers. That may be a new process for that provider to have to reorganize that insurance on file with their respective practice, right? So as we continue on, we're still on par for a Teladoc implementation effective August 1st. Again, another breath of fresh air here. in that we will, at no cost, be offering this district-wide with employee registration. Again, an educational opportunity, but this is a tremendous, let's call it after-hours, weekend, presenteeism, absenteeism discussion point to where we don't want teachers to have to leave for their care or potentially a dependent child's care, not to be at the district. Doing their job professionally. This may allow them that opportunity to manage to a basic episodic primary care situation at 9 o'clock at night, as I've done with my own son, right? And you do that with a board-certified physician by phone or by video with a reduced copay amount by plan, as is illustrated in the lower right corner, a $10 copay on plans 1, 3, and 4, and plan 2, which is subject to the calendar year deductible, would be approximately half of what it would cost to see a primary care provider on that program. So a great benefit. This is still moving forward. We're excited about this, and we're beginning that promotion now. As a reminder, in terms of percentages, as we reviewed the alternates, the insurance committee recommendations, as you see here on the board, alternate F is that 5-plan option. Alternate A is the 4-plan option. To the right in those rectangles, you see the percentage increase that represents as we looked through in the matrix in hard dollars previously, as well as alternate G at the bottom. Again, I'll point out to you, as we mentioned in the past, the underwriter's comments highlighted in the footnotes of this slide is important for the board to reconsider, in that as you look at alternate F, the underwriter is highly concerned in adding that 5th plan could create an enrollment shift that provides an undetermined change in the risk pool that may adjust future claims trend and affect the district adversely in the future with that unknown. Alternate G, you see the double asterisk. The underwriter has a similar concern there with that shift and the overall premium level, which, remember, that is our composite rated illustration across those 4 plans where all the increases were averaged, the 13.9%. That may also adversely affect the rating pool in future years. So those are the disclaimers from Florida Blues Underwriting that it's important for the board to be well educated upon. And
I just
Ms.
wanted to
Lively?
make the comment, we talked about it last time for transparency purposes. So the insurance committee, if you can go back to that slide, their first choice, if you remember, was alternate F with that additional 5th plan. We felt the opposite as far as which plan would be the best option, and we had it reversed with plan A being the primary choice because of, it's a little cheaper, but also because of the underwriter concerns. So I just wanted to make it clear that we sort of stepped out of order with how they feel, and I think it's very clear on the insurance committee side, and of course risk management feels the same. If there was a way to pick it up across the board on whatever choice you make, that would hold everybody harmless and not create those additional expenses for the people on the other plans who likely will not treat or cannot afford the paycheck rates for the increase. So I just wanted to make sure we said that again.
Are there any questions at this time that I can help answer? If not, I'd like Laura Lingle from our office, who's our wellness coordinator, to provide an additional wellness benefit update.
I think I know the answer, but I think we have to hear it. Lori, what is, I know we can't wait on the federal regulation, whether they'll eliminate that again or repeal it. What is our absolute time frame? If we hold off a little bit longer to see what the negotiations with Advent and Florida Blue, do we have time, and is it realistic that we could stay with the PPO and afford it? That's my question, with the unknown of the federal regulation.
Okay. So I think the candid answer, Ms. McCall, is we do not know how that negotiation with Advent Health will ultimately pan out.
Right.
With consideration that it's worth 5%, I think the mathematical consideration for the board would be, would that 5%, if in fact all of it was completely removed off the table, change your ultimate vote in modifying Plan 1 to an HMO platform versus keeping it as a PPO? That's a budgetary conversation that I'm not in a position to answer. However, I would note that it is arguably a $2.5 million question, right? So is a $2.5 million variable, which, again, candidly, and again, Florida Blue and Advent's negotiations, I don't sit at that table. It would be a tremendous win if any of it were to be reduced, but the expectation of it all to be reduced, I think is,
Can I ask you this?
yes, ma'am.
That 2.5 mil that you spoke about, if the feds do remove this employee fee, what would it change from 2.5? What would that figure change to?
Okay, so let's just use round math.
Percentages and stuff.
Right, so our total variable this year is 7.8% between the hospital, 5.1, and the Affordable Care Act's 2.7.
7 point,
Okay, so if you add them together, of your 19.2% rate increase, 7.8% comprises the hospital variable in the market adjustment and the federal health insurer tax component of 2.7. So if we knew the answer to both of those being completely eliminated, I believe you may be having a much different consideration for the end vote, yes.
I feel we have a better chance of the 2.7% than we do the other.
I think it's important for the board to consider from a
And I would
fiduciary.
be willing to gamble that that's going to happen.
Well, we don't know. We're hearing both sides. It is an election year, so we're hopeful it does get repealed as it has in the past as well.
I'm more able to gamble that direction than the 5% one.
Even with the hospital, even if you took half of that, 2-point-something million dollars, that you could assume maybe it could reduce. Is that materially enough for you financially not to make a decision today, which is what you have to decide in conjunction with timing? Like I said, I don't want you to feel like you're rushed. We just have, concerns about moving forward because, again, we don't even go to board vote officially till, I believe, July 23rd. If we waited, we would be into August. So.
I wish I knew what percentage of our people that are on the free plan. A lot of the people that really are in the lower income probably do also have Medicaid and some other things.
Because they're working.
But Angie Boynton, when she was here, she found a whole bunch of people that were on the really low income, like some of the bus drivers and stuff, that actually did have Medicaid for their families. Doesn't matter if you're on welfare.
For the
Medicaid.
kids.
Yeah, for the kids.
For themselves.
And so probably a lot of those people do have. In fact, she was concerned that we were kind of double charging because so many of them did have Medicaid but I mean, we don't have any way of knowing that because y'all probably don't know it either, Lori, but,
Well, I know that we have many employees who work for us simply so they can have the insurance. And this is not an easy discussion to have, but I'm so worried about them particularly,
Yes.
And it's frustrating because I feel like we're between a rock and a hard place. I so want to keep the PPO, and here's why. These skyrocketing costs are not sustainable. They have to stop somewhere. And the free plan is one of our only recruitment tools left to be able to be competitive at all with these larger markets. We're reducing coverage and school board people are experiencing increasing stress, which is evidenced by our increases in cancer and catastrophic illnesses. That's why we're sitting here. So, and along the lines of what you were mentioning, Ms. Stacy, I hadn't thought of that, but it does make me wonder about cost-sharing opportunities, especially when it comes to pharmacy and these just extraordinarily expensive chemo drugs and things like that. What other programs may be in place through pharmaceutical companies, and is there the opportunity to mine those more, to leverage what we're trying to do here? This is big.
So going to the HMO,
Yeah,
the coverage is the same. Am I correct in that?
no, it's
Benefits.
not.
As relative to calendar.
Yeah, and people travel.
Get authorized for everything. I mean, I'm not comfortable.
It's like a
with
redheaded
HMO.
stepchild in the medical community.
Before I would do that, I don't even know if it's legal to do what I would do if I was running this show. I don't even know if it's legal. What I would do is say anyone that makes like our salary forward, that's paying for an additional plan, we all go up a certain amount to help eat this up. The people that are school board salary and above, that we do pay an additional amount.
and that the people in the lower income section to make sure I pay, so that we could keep the PPO for the free employees, that the people from our salary up would get if you're in this income bracket, you take a hit. And I don't even know if that's legal, but if I was running my business, that's what I would do.
Because even the free employees, when I started, it was a $250 deductible, or maybe even $100. And then, free coverage. And the deductible applied to everything. Now it's $2,500, And a lot of things don't qualify for the deductible. So it has just spiraled out of control.
If I may, to clarify the question, the benefits for the PPO on Plan 1 as compared to the benefits in HMO Plan 1. As you look at this slide, calendar year deductibles, co-insurance, co-pays, annual maximum out-of-pockets, wellness benefits, these deductibles that the employees would use at the point of service, these do not change as you consider an HMO policy. What changes is on this slide where we were comparing authorizations, the community provider investment, Mayo. I can't use it out of state with the exception of emergency rooms. So that would be a definitive material difference between the two networks and how the
A
policies.
lot of reauthorization. These people are sick, and the time that it takes to get these reauthorizations through and everything, I don't know. I mean, I would pay more, but I won't ask them to pay more.
So to go back to the numbers, if I may, at 19.2% overall for all four plans for the board's consideration, let's call it $7.7 million across all four plans is that board cost. As compared to the alternate Plan A, let's call that $5.1 million across all four plans. So as you consider from a budgetary perspective, what is fiduciarily viable for the district, just wanted you all to have those numbers in the back of your mind as you consider what is.
I'm not going to vote for an HMO for our free, I'm just not.
I'm not voting for an HMO either. I think, I saw words
we'll cut the-
potential. I mean, we know what we may potentially be paying. And PP, the difference, seeing those, like, right now, if you don't need a Mayo Clinic, that's fine. But when you're the person that needs that Mayo, I think that's the least we can do for our employees is just follow through and give them something. I think what we could do is look really hard at our budget and see what we could remove at this point. I mean, maybe, again, reevaluate it in a year, because I think I'm hearing a consensus that you're not going to get the HMO this year. But I do think that we should be looking ahead, but also, I know the clinics. So now that there is an increase in these rates, we might just need to go back maybe, and just, not saying we're gonna do it, but maybe reevaluate the clinics and stuff like that, and just leave our options rather than just, do this. I think we could
And on
take away
this-
from somewhere to
on
pay for this year.
Telephone deal.
Teledoc, yes, ma'am.
So that might help our payouts also, to reduce our payouts. When you tell us how much we're paying out at the end of the year, would that affect that bottom line where we're not?
Here's a good statistic to answer that question as we look at key indicators for claims paid through May. For primary care physician utilization, last year, in the same 12-month claims period, you had 1.6 million in paid claims for primary care for the entire district. This most recent 12-month period, it has gone down 3.5% already to 1.6 million. So what I would consider as you look at Teledoc is, yes, convenience. Yes, we will have some people, think children as well, with families that are covered on the policy, have access to basic episodic care that certainly will benefit. Will we identify some catastrophic diagnoses that we may prevent earlier because of Teledoc? It's probably an immaterial consideration. However, I think for access to primary care that may keep a big population healthier, would that 3.5% maybe continue to trend down in total claims costs for primary care? Potentially. Or it may go up because there may be more people using this, right? But that's a good trend. You want people to go to their primary care quarterback of care to identify where are they in their
Better
overall
than going
health
to the
and well-being.
emergency room.
No question about it, yes. So I think it is a definitive positive. My point is, 20% of your claims make up the majority of our issue, and those are the high-cost medicines, et cetera. This is a key piece to help alleviate some of that future risk. However, it is not a material dollar savings that would affect the bottom line next year. Last point I want to
The
make.
big-ticket people that are causing this.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, and then
As you look at your financial considerations, the only last point I'd like to make is approximately, as you look at roughly a $50 million spend to the district, every percentage point that we consider, and going back to the hospital negotiation, going back to the 2.7% ACA tax, right, it's about $500,000 to the school district's budget. So as you think about how many points could we see come off, Ms. Stacy, I hope you're right. I hope they do repeal the insure tax, but we can't confirm that today. Will the Advent negotiation be successful? I hope that it is for this community. Will that reduce
And I
this?
also want to remind,
Yeah.
too, I don't want to speak on Ms. Boston Ellis's behalf, but what we understand is we had that $1.7 million put aside that we've saved of ProShare money, and I believe that the plan was to use that to offset the cost of any decision that you made. So while it is a one-time decrease, you won't have it obviously next year and the following year, it would make whatever decision you make right now a little less painful than the numbers you're seeing there.
so we understand, we are at the end of our 3-year contract with Florida Blue. So whatever we do here, it's a 3-year contract, but the rates will change, right? So if we choose to stay with the PPO, which that sounds like consensus, then we've got that for 3 years. Am I correct?
So each policy period and each renewal is calculated on an annual basis.
Okay.
So we are at the tail end of our 3-year contract with Florida Blue, which was a coordinated effort based on profit sharing consideration, the $1.7 million that Lori just shared with you that has been reserved on successful or profitable underwriting years. However, to clarify, that doesn't mean that our current rates are locked in for 3 years.
No, I
This is looked at every
understand
year.
that, but are we locked into a PPO for 3 years?
No, ma'am. Every year, the board would have the discretion to change its benefit portfolio offering, and in 2021, you would have the opportunity to change that again.
And are we locked in with Blue Cross Blue Shield for 3 years, or do we have an out clause?
There's generally always an out clause, but for any multi-year contract.
What about if we get to the point where we take it on as in-house,
Self-insured.
self-insured?
As you recall, we've looked at that, I believe,
No, we looked at it,
3
but,
times in the last 4 years.
and it takes that big investment of money to start it. But if we had that big investment of money, would we save from there? What's the?
The actuarial analysis that has been done on the past 3 occasions have shown a net neutral comparison of fully insured as compared to self-insured in terms of total spend for the district. However, it's a definitive analysis that simply must be done in the future, and I assure you will be one of our analysis that's considered in future years. But it does take reserve establishment, and I also would offer to the board, it takes a year or 2 in which we have a healthy trend of claims to where as you look at stop-loss insurance and you look at what those costs may be associated with a self-funded plan design, the attraction of a stop-loss carrier for a group that's running at a higher rate of trend claim as compared to a more healthy year. I'll leave it to your simple understanding of at what point would it be better for us to go self-insured.
Right, because if the spending is neutral, but the services we're able to shop and provide a deeper array of services that are more matched to what our needs seem to be, I'm ready to be on consensus for this year, but I'm also ready to shop.
Just look and see.
If I may, Laurel's got some more good news, Mrs. Thrower. One, we wanted to update you on the mammogram discussion, as well as the other wellness programs. It'll be brief. If I could invite Laurel to come up, we'll share that with you briefly.
Mr. Buss, before you do that, so my understanding, what the consensus is that you all want to pick up the entire cost, even for Plan 2, 3, and 4. The increase in the cost, you want to do that across the board, or you're picking up the increase in the free plan?
I'll take
Or are
it.
you picking up the total increases? We just need a consensus on this.
That's a very good point, Ms. McCall, because we've kind of danced around it.
Yeah, you have.
Historically,
And-
we have picked it up, obviously, it was never as costly as this. Historically, it's been picked up to hold everybody. Not have concerns about the
I mean, even if it was a nominal amount, like, I mean, I don't know, we've got I don't know how many employees are on the pay and how many are on the free, numbers and stuff, but, I mean, you've given it to us and everything, but,
Right there.
okay. I don't know how a nominal increase, like I said, I mean, I can afford it on school board pay, to pay a little more to get really good insurance. But I know some people can't. I mean, I'll cut stuff in my personal budget to be able to afford it, but I don't want people that make less than me to have to do it. And I don't know, have you ever heard of a sliding scale type thing on a plan like this, where a sliding scale income affects how much you pay? I mean, I would pay more to keep the guys at the bottom to pay nothing.
That's a very atypical approach with a group program like this, however.
Is it? I mean, I don't know, I'm just.
I would offer, as I've shared with risk management, we're now in a,
In
we're
my
now in
DNA to ask
a,
atypical
we're
questions.
now in a position in healthcare where all potential future solutions need to be researched and researched carefully.
Because I don't want the taxpayers, here's what I don't want. There are people in the community who are taxpayers, who are low income, and, you know, their taxes kind of affect what they pay affects what we do. And I don't want someone in the community to be, that makes $25,000 a year, to have to be looking at me making $39,000 a year, to say, I'm having to help pick up her insurance because she can vote herself, not have to do it, okay? Because I have the right to vote that I don't have to get an increase, okay? So I feel that for at least my income up, we should have a sliding scale. And if that's possible, to affect our increase, to keep those at the bottom from not paying an increase. So, I mean, there has to be a way to do this without killing our budget and not taking stuff out of the class, and not taking paras out of the classroom, and not hitting the classroom. There has to be a way to do this, and it's an uncomfortable conversation, but I'm kind of all about uncomfortable conversations, so.
So if you see, the board pays increase free plan one only, you're paying almost 6.5 in an increase. And if you pay the increase in all four plans, you're at almost 9 million. That's a pretty significant increase. So maybe that's the conversation we need to have right now. Is, are we willing to pay across the board, or for the free single plan?
And how much more would it really cost if we did it that way?
And how much would we gain back for Miss Boston Ellis?
Right.
We probably need to
I'm not
work those
privy to
numbers
speak for
out.
the
Yeah.
school board's budget, but I can confirm the premiums. And the point I wanted to make is you compare no benefit changes. Remember, we're dealing with approximately $150,000 reduction based on the revised claims, the 19.19%. So have that in the back of your mind. So as you compare, considering 7.7 million, all PPO plans as is, compared to alternate A, which Plan 1 becomes the HMO, Plans 2 through 4 do not change, comes to a $5.1 million across all four plans increase. So it is a $2 million conversation.
Some of that coming from the offset of the budget, at least this year.
All I'm saying is I'm willing to take a hit for the kids on the bottom, so. I mean,
The
that's-
free
I don't know if
plan-
anybody else-
That would
Free
be
plan obligations come from your contracts with the union, so you can't say you'd have to negotiate it with your unions to
okay.
increase, because if you say
No,
like.
you pay, I thought the free plan came with it. We're
That-
saying we're
yeah.
giving the free plan.
I was just saying for the talk on salary threshold, that would impact your unions. So if you were looking at a sliding scale, you'd have to negotiate it.
I think the union would
So-
be happy to get the free plan still out of it, and not have to have an HMO out of it.
That's the contract requirement, as long as you guys offer a free plan.
And
you're in
that we do.
compliance.
Plan 1 would be that plan right there, the board pays increase
I'm not
free
saying that.
plan
That's
1.
exactly what I'm saying. Nothing changes for that.
Nothing
Bring your
change.
attention to the fact that we don't have another work session till July 18th. Lori's going to have to pull numbers. I'm suggesting we're going to have to schedule another work session to, because Teresa's,
Let's do
we,
This is a huge issue. We
and
need another
budget-wise,
work
yeah, because we're going to have to know what you're going to do because that's going to impact
Everything.
a lot.
So, Ms. Lively, can you break out if we did not pay for the increase on plans 2, 3, and 4?
But left the free plan 1 alone as we paid.
Leave?
6.49. So this center column would represent the board paying the increase.
Right. But my concern is, I'd like to see the numbers on what those employees on 2, 3, and 4, what does that look like on increase for them
Per pay period.
per pay period?
Just like, how much money would we gain from that? I mean, is it a significant enough amount to make a difference? I don't know.
Because we're talking 1,000.
So if you look at the amount of
1,100
people,
employees.
without talking numbers, you can see that, there's not that many people if you look at plans.
So most people are on the plan, the prepaid,
Yes.
board paid.
So you've got 144 on Plan 4, for example, 553.
So it's not that many people. Well, we got a lot on the plan.
But, so that's going to significantly increase what comes out of their paycheck. That's what I'm trying to find out.
And that's
Is it like
across
nominal
1,100
or-
people. That's across 1,100 people. So
Nancy,
that's what I want to know, is divided across those 1,100 people, how much would theirs go up per plan for 2, 3, and 4? If we kept 1 for each.
I mean, we have to play all this devil's advocate stuff to try to get, like, to an agreement on
Right.
something.
Right, it's, yes, I'd be happy to attend another work session to get this right,
We have
as right as we
do,
can.
we have to.
if I may.
Dr. Mayor's right, we need
Okay,
more
let's
time.
listen to Mr. Buss.
I'm sorry, Ms. Seaman just provided me from risk management. She's already calculated, just to give you a point of reference, cost per pay period. Nancy, thank you for that. So if you were to consider Plan 2, which would be the first buy-up plan for single employee-only coverage, if the board were only to pick up Plan 1's increase, that employee would be paying $33.54 more per paycheck. If that employee were covering family, they would be paying an additional $112.68 per paycheck. And I'll remind you, as you hear these numbers, the enrollment by plan, so we're in Plan 2, so we're discussing 446 in single coverage and 342 in family. So as we go through these, that's a good point of reference as well.
We don't have to pick it all up to do it. I mean, we can pick just a portion of it up to do it. We don't have to pick the entire increase up, but if we picked up part of the increase
You mean for Plan 1?
for the pay plan, I mean, I'm not saying to get 100% of the money back, but like an increase, but not,
Yeah,
like anything that'll help.
especially on the family side. You know, if
pla-
they're single, it's not that.
Plan 3, as a point of reference, single coverage would increase $42.73 per pay period. Family coverage would increase $154 per pay period. And then the top Plan 4 would increase $61.91 per pay period for single coverage. For family, $203 per pay period.
That's if we picked up the whole increase, though.
Right.
Yeah, so are you thinking like maybe take
Just pay 'em
50%?
Or 25% of it, just something to help,
Right.
like something that's,
Well, I mean, we
Somewhat
are
affordable.
offering the free plan, though, I mean, that.
they can move to the free plan.
Yeah, so that is an option. And then
Exactly.
if they choose, then,
Well, the people that are on the extended plans are usually the ones that are making these very large claims, because they're the ones that have the chronic illnesses, and they're the ones that need more than the free plan, to be very honest with you.
Yeah, we need more time to, this is, don't you think?
So Ms.
they're
Lively,
the people that's
we're
making
going to
more
schedule
income, too.
another work session. So if we, could you run some numbers for us that if we picked up on plans 2, 3, and 4, 25% of the increase,
How much it would be.
how much that would be?
While keeping the Plan 1 the same as a PPO, right?
Yes.
I mean, I'll pay whatever I have to pay to keep Plant 1 free for the employees, for the PPO.
And then hopefully, our negotiations with Advent will be somewhat successful, or the Florida Blues negotiations, and also the repeal. I mean, we can't really count on that, but
If we get it, factor it in like play like. Well, I mean, we like to talk about unicorns here. Let's talk about that one.
You and your unicorn.
Let it be
Best
just part
case
of the
unicorns.
Let's just let it be a unicorn. Okay, if we get that, how much would we save if it comes through? How does that factor into this?
So let's look at that.
And we will know by the 18th, because you said in 15 days.
Right, and that was last
roughly.
week.
So hopefully,
will have
we'll
an
have
update.
more information then too.
So let's look at another work,
July 18th, isn't that what our next one is? Or, okay, so let's look at,
Like 15 days from now, whatever?
People are gonna be away.
Miss Mayor, Dr. Mayor's eyes haven't blinked.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That would be July 11th. Do you think we'll know something by July 11th?
We'll have an update of some kind on or before July 11th.
Is that the soonest we can do it?
Well, I think it's,
We need a,
I really would like for us to be in a spot where we have information on Advent Health. I just think, and if we can get that done in 15 days, and Mr. Buss and I have had that conversation, we're not quite sure that, but at least that gives them the opportunity to do that, because I think that will, if there is some give in that, then we have a little breathing room, and we can, I think, make.
I would not be available for that meeting, but I would be available on Monday, the 15th.
And to meet Dr. Mayor partway, because I can see she's uncomfortable with us waiting this long because she's trying to build her budget. What if you update us, like whatever information you get, like as you're doing your calculations, if you get it to the board members so we can start digesting it a little bit, so that we are prepared when we get your news.
So are you not available that whole week?
That is correct.
So if we had a work session on Monday, the 15th, I know
not
that
here.
you're not
here
here.
that date. I'm not here until the 17th. And that's if he, actually the 18th, I had his,
Okay, can we go ahead and have a workshop so that Dr. Mayor, I mean, I don't want to hurt her neck because I'm telling you, she's got a big staffing plan she's got to put together and she needs us to start having some conversations. So can we have an update, a closer workshop, and you give us the information about employees and how it's going to affect, so we can go ahead and have that conversation. Then when you plug in your number, we'll finish it instead of, we'll be real close to a decision so that we can pull the trigger.
Because the district is closed all of 4th of July week, is that right?
No,
It's not right, okay.
no,
Would we have,
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
for the holiday.
would we have information available by July 2nd?
What day's that?
Is everybody
Tuesday?
here July 2nd?
I'm, like, these next few weeks, I am like gone a lot, hit and miss, so.
Okay, well, what about, we've got July 1st, July 2nd, and then July 3rd is the last day that the district is open?
No, it's closed the 3rd.
It's closed the 3rd. July
So then
1st,
people will be out of town from that point forward.
right.
So let's back up then to where, do we have 10 days before the end of the month, back into
So
June?
June 27th is our master board training, so we can't do it on that date. We will,
What day of the week is that?
today is the
Thursday.
20th.
What about June 28th, Friday?
District's not open
District's
on
not open on
Friday.
All right, what about the day before the master?
for you. We can open the building for you.
What about the master board training the day before that? I mean, the day
When are you
before.
available?
I'm serious when I say,
Right.
I'm
You got a
like,
lot going on.
really, the next few weeks, I'm like,
Well, our master board training goes till 1. We could take a break and come here at 2
That's about you.
Let's do it.
and do,
because I'm leaving early because I'm flying out that afternoon.
But you could share input or something, or,
Can't legally. I mean, I guess
no,
I
you
could.
can't, like, or, I don't know.
Can we meet before?
Submit something to him and he can share it. I
What
don't know.
about the day before the master board training? What day
Earlier
is that?
that morning?
What's the day before the master board training, Beth? What day of the week is that?
The 26th.
Wednesday?
26th, Wednesday, the 26th. We could meet in the morning just for this.
That morning works for me.
That works. Wednesday, the 26th of
So
June.
and then you can give us all this
We
information.
can't advertise.
You can't have time to advertise
Can't
it now?
advertise a public meeting with less than a week. That's next week. That's
And we
next
may not
Wednesday.
even have that
so.
information from the Advent.
So what is
No,
your
we don't need the admin
suggestion?
information. We need to, but we need to talk about all these numbers and how much it's gonna cost and.
Yeah, but Advent's a big part of that.
Kelly, can you call in? If
Could be
we
on an
did
airplane.
July
airport.
1 or 2, can you call in?
Let me see where I'm at. I will be at, on July, you said 1st or 2nd?
Uh-huh.
No, I mean, don't know where, I mean, I'm gonna be in Denver. I don't know.
I mean, we may just have to do it without Kelly. I mean, we've got to get these numbers, and we can't,
We won't be voting on anything.
No, we're just compiling information so we can have our,
Or do you want to do kind of what Nancy said, Ms. Stacy said, where you all compile everything and get it out, and are we allowed to vote over email or
Can't vote at all.
consensus or?
Discuss,
No,
can't discuss.
no.
all right,
Okay.
can we do this? Since we do have school board meetings and stuff going on, can we, like in board concern, like if you got this information to us, and on board concerns that night of the school board meeting, I said, well, we've got this or this, and we talk a little bit about it, and kind of where we fit, where we are, so kind of everybody gets a feel of where we're at. Can't we do it then? It's televised.
We don't have a board meeting till late in July.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah.
the only meeting in
Well,
July
go
is
ahead
the end
and
of the
do it
month.
without me, and then I'll hear what happened. Because we're not gonna vote anything.
We're not voting on
and then
anything.
We're not voting.
We
So
can
that's
just
what
get
we'll do.
together.
Okay,
It's
so
just my
so
schedule.
let's do July, either Monday, July 1st, or
Yes.
Tuesday, July 2nd.
Monday, July 1st.
Okay, Monday,
The
July.
1st,
I think it would be.
9 o'clock?
Is that okay?
I
And we
will-
gotta find out if Mr. Lively's gonna be in town. Are you taking vacation then or anything?
I actually have a conference the week of the 15th. I will be here prior to that.
Oh, okay, so July 1st works for you?
Okay.
We will do all we can to have an answer back from Florida Blue and Advent by that time, but again, that
Does that
proceeds.
fall into your schedule, Mr. Buss?
I will be here. That precedes the 15-day timetable, so I'll do our best to have an
At least
update. of
maybe
that.
you'll have a little bit insight into.
But we'll certainly have all the numbers spread and be more than happy to get that to you quickly so you can review that.
Okay.
9 o'clock?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Thomas. There was some concern after the last workshop about breast cancer and how it may be impacting our large claims, and so I was asked to just come address that and maybe provide some solutions to what we can do to help alleviate that. Just as a reminder, cancer-related illnesses comprise about 50% of our high-cost claims. The top 25 of those 4 are breast cancer related. And so we've done some research to try and determine how we can better promote the breast cancer benefit and get those target population to participate in annual mammograms. Florida Blue provided us an update. Currently, 74% of our target population is receiving an annual mammogram, which is up from 71% last year. It is 10% above Florida Blue's average of 65% of eligible population. So in general, we are exceeding standards for breast cancer. Obviously, we would like to see what that other 25% is doing and what we can do to promote that service. I provided you some copies of what we've currently done over the last year. So we do the promotion in October to encourage employees to participate, remind them that it is a free benefit. Regardless of what plan they are on, they can receive that mammogram at no cost. Just in May, we did a biweekly email about what routine checkups everyone should be receiving, and we provided the list that Florida Blue outlines based on your age and your gender, what you should be receiving. And then we also informed them, I think Mr. Cummings had asked about how we could incentivize some of those things. If they do have the cancer all-state policy, for getting any of their annual screenings, they receive a benefit paid out once they've done that. And then we also put it in the quarterly newsletter once this last year about what benefits they can receive. So we are, working to communicate on those things. Ms. Thrower reached out to some of the other districts to inquire about what they're doing, specifically with mobile mammographies. It was identified mostly in the Tampa Bay area that they are doing that. And so I communicated with some of my counterparts in those areas. I specifically talked with Manatee and Sarasota about what they're doing. Some of the things that they indicated that they liked about it is obviously it's a convenience thing and it's high visibility. They did indicate some cons, and probably the biggest one that I would like to point out is they said it targets the low-hanging fruit. So what they found is that people that are already getting their mammograms said, oh, well, I'll just do it on the bus. I don't know that it's necessarily hitting the 25% that we really need to be targeting, because there's probably other reasons that they're not getting it. Not that it's not convenient. There may be some other reasons surrounding that. The other thing is the lack of continuity of care. So you get on a mammogram bus. If they find something, then you're having to find a local provider to then do further investigation or ultimately treatment. And so they're having to send the results from the mammogram on the bus to whatever provider you find. Hopefully the image is appropriate. And so they indicated that there was some concern there. And then also backlash from the community providers. Manatee County is probably the most similar in size and demographic to our population, and they said that they have had significant backlash from the mammography and radiology providers there in the county that says, you're using a bus from Tampa that's coming here, and then, the people that we're treating are ultimately getting their mammogram done on the bus and then coming to us later for treatment. And so that they indicated that they had a lot of backlash. When I contacted the mobile mammography unit that they use, it does not travel further north than Pasco County, and there is nothing in our area. There are no in-network providers with a mobile mammography unit that travels to Marion County. So unfortunately, I don't believe that that's a viable option for us. So we said, what else can we do to encourage annual mammograms, specifically targeting the 25%? Coincidentally, one of the local providers was reaching out to a lot of members of the community, letting them know what their October plans are. We let them know that we're trying to come up with a plan, and they have offered to do quarterly Saturday events where not only women can come in for their mammograms, but they will have a physician on staff that day. So following the mammogram, they can address any questions or concerns with that physician immediately that day. They also indicated they can make it fun with having some drawings, things there for the women to have. Also, we're working with Florida Blue to identify that 25%. Who are those women? What can we do to get them in for their mammograms? As a fully insured group, I can't have that information. Risk management cannot have that information, so it would be a Florida Blue outreach to those women, and they have committed to doing that and identifying them. The other thing, too, is that we need to focus on the dependents and the retirees. A lot of the efforts that we use and the mobile mammogram bus would only be impacting our active employees. And so we're trying to see what we can do to reach the dependent and the retired population as well. And then the mobile screening bus from Advent that travels to all of the schools, we are going to be working with them to, that they can provide a handout to the women in the target population that go on that bus to encourage mammograms as well.
The wellness bus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Just as a final reminder, when we're talking about costs and things like that, annual mammograms do save lives because when we identify early, we're more likely to be successful in that. They may cause less saving, or they may increase savings. If we catch it early, the treatment course may cost less, but they ultimately don't prevent cancer. And so I think we would be remiss if we, didn't identify some of those other things. As you said, stress management, making sure the employees are getting physical activity, proper nutrition. And so we will continue our efforts in those areas as an overall program. So.
Thank you. You really delved into it, and I love the idea of figuring out who the 25% is and doing some targeted outreach, because that's where our issue lies. It does mystify me a little bit that we've got University of Florida right up the road, a teaching hospital, and then Women's Imaging here, which is so proactive with us. It would seem, perhaps going forward, that we could think about ways to partner with them to just bring more prevention and wellness.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And I love the Saturday idea.
Yes.
Because I think that will help women get out that maybe can't make an appointment because of work during the.
And I think that they're willing to make it a very special event for the ladies.
Just for the schools.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's good.
See what you like.
Thank you.
They're gonna do it on a Saturday because of you.
Helps very much. Is there any public comment?
Thrower. The DNA Rams.
Chris Altabello, 2020 Northeast 43rd Street, Ocala, Florida. Madam Chair, Superintendent, board members. Now I'm up here representing my people. I'm representing people that make as low as $13.15 an hour. I don't represent bus drivers or the IUPAT. They probably make even less. I'm here to ask for every consideration that you have to pick this up across the board. The Insurance Committee, which I've been a member of for over a decade now, has always made a recommendation to the board. We've done it under careful consideration with great input from Barrett Liner and Bus. One of the reasons why we took a good look and came up with the decision of an HMO, and I'm not a fan of HMOs, but like you said earlier, somebody up here, we're between a rock and a hard place. And the HMO was going to save us a bunch of money than retaining the PPO plan. So, you know, the insurance industry, everybody's kind of, you know, have us in a pickle here, in a jam. But I'm here to tell you that for somebody making $13.15 an hour, and even the teachers, and even the administrators, you go on the DOE website, it's chock full of information of what we're paying here in Marion County. And there's very few classifications that are above state average of anything, and that includes administration. Now, I don't represent them, but I'm here to tell you that, you know, any hit that an employee takes is going to cause a hardship. But think of the people making $13.15 an hour, a 25, if the board covers 25%, if the board covers 50%, I don't know how they're going to make it. I encourage you to take a look at everything. I haven't seen reserves. I haven't seen your end of the year financial reports, things like that. You're supposed to have 3%. That's what the state mandates. We have reserves for a reason. I heard today a couple of things. I heard Ms. Thrower mention recruitment and retention as part of this conversation, and it's a big one, and we're desperate in need of recruitment and retention, from pairs all the way up. And I also heard Ms. McCall say no mission, no money, or no money, no mission. So, you know, let's see what we can do and continue our studying and everything like that. But board, please look at everything, because if we go back, and let me tell you something, in negotiations, we have said that insurance benefits and the increase that the board picked up last year on our negotiagram to our people said this included a $600 increase that the board picked up. So that's part of the negotiation process, but we sold it as a board. When we thanked the board, we thanked Dr. Mayer for doing this, for picking it up. So it was part of our compensation that we sold to our membership to get the votes. If that doesn't happen, it's, you know, it's just another thing that we're going to have to try and advocate to get people here. So I won't be here at the next meeting, but you're going to hear from me in an email, I'm sure. So please exhaust every effort.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Seeing none. We're still good. Okay, we're going to move forward with the Westport High School Power Hour update with Mr. Ben Whitehouse.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Mayer, Ms. Prestipino, Mr. Gibbs.
We're here to talk about Power Hour and share what our updated plan is for Power Hour at Westport High School. With me, I have Ms. Ginger Cruz, the wonderful principal at Westport, to help me share some of this information. All right, so just a quick recap, the purpose of Power Hour and why it was originally put in place at Westport High School. So Power Hour does a lot for the students there, primarily as a remediation option for our students to provide tutoring, make up missed work, but also for our students who are unable to participate after school or before school in activities. So they're able to participate in extracurricular activities during Power Hour, meet with counselors for academic and social emotional needs, which is very important for those students, and accelerate learning, prepare for arts events, athletic competitions, complete credit recovery, and of course eat lunch. So there's a lot that goes on during that Power Hour time period. I also want to point out that the two groups that have probably benefited the most over the years with Power Hour have been our students who are serviced by ESE and our ELL students, because those are students that need that additional support, and that extra hour in the day provided that opportunity for us to provide those supports to them above and beyond what is already given. All right, so just a quick recap on the timeline of where Power Hour came about. Power Hour started in August of 2011. That prior spring, Mrs. Elshman, who was the principal at the time, had numerous conversations with a number of staff members on that campus about how we can provide additional support for our students and how we can make sure that our students have the greatest access and the greatest support on our campus for everybody, not just for those who were capable of being a part of the programs that we provide at Westport, but every student having equal access to everything that we could provide them. And so some of the things that we looked at were, one, our graduation rate at the time was about 76%. It was fairly low. That was when we had just started to switch over to the new federal cohort rate for graduation rates. So we had a graduation rate that we were concerned about. We had students' ability to pass courses and percent of students that were failing courses that we wanted to make sure we could address. And then just overall participation in clubs and activities. The vast majority of students at Westport High School ride the bus. And buses at Westport would arrive within 10 minutes of school starting, and we rolled those buses 5 minutes after school ended. So there was very little opportunity for those students at that time to be able to meet with teachers, to provide tutoring, or receive extra support with homework, to meet with their counselors, or to participate in clubs and activities. And so Power Hour was birthed from that need to make sure that we could provide all those things to all of our students. What you'll note is that we put what I think is a really powerful statistic up there. Since the start of Power Hour, the graduation rate at Westport High School has increased by over 21%. It is now 97%. Every year that Power Hour has been in place, Westport, except for 1 year, has had the highest graduation rate in Marion County. And so I think that speaks to the volume of the work that we were able to accomplish during that time period to provide the supports to our students to make sure they were all successful throughout the year. At the end there, last summer, we've had lots of conversations with the board, and at the board's request last summer, we re-looked at Power Hour and how we could modify and change the way Power Hour was structured. And so at the board's request, it was modified for this past school year. So we're looking at 3 different lunch options for Westport and what we could viably provide to them. So currently, the current Power Hour setup, if you're not quite familiar, what we did was divide Power Hour in half. Westport's campus was originally set up as 2 schools, and so there's a natural east and west side of the campus. And so what we did is created an east side Power Hour where all the students on the east side would have Power Hour for that time period, while the west side students were in 3rd period class. So if you were in East Side Power Hour, you had that full time to roam around the east area. You could access any of your teachers that were on the east side of campus. However, if you had teachers on the west side, you could not go over there because we wanted to make sure we could contain the supervision of those students within a relatively small geographic area for that safety and supervision. Similarly, after that was over, those kids went back to class and we had a West Side Power Hour that followed that. And so that's the current model that's in practice this year, and we'll share some data about that. Ms. Cruz will share some data about that in just a minute. The other options, 3 lunches. We were a 3-lunch school, as a lot of schools in Marion County are, prior to the start of Power Hour. If we were to go to 3 lunches with 2,700 students, that roughly breaks out to about 900 students per lunch and requires about 110 minutes of supervision time for all the leadership team. And we'll talk about some of the barriers of that 3-lunch option, which most of you have heard me share several times before, but we'll review that again in just a minute.
The other one, and Ms. Cruz is going to discuss this a little bit more, is our revamp proposal, which is the alpha time, where 2,700 students would then have the one lunch, similar to how Power Hour had been in the past, which is 50 minutes of supervision time for our leadership team. All right, so the barriers. As I mentioned before, Westport was designed to be two schools. It was Westport High, Westport Middle School, and the cafeteria was built to the capacity that would service two schools for 6 lunches. So we're now one whole school, and 6 lunches is not a feasible option in a 50-minute period. The seating capacity of that cafeteria is stated at 700, but it's probably more like 600 or less based on the available number of seats and what we can really fit in there comfortably. Before we went to Power Hour, we had about 1,900 students at Westport. I was in charge of discipline before and during the start of Power Hour, so I remember vividly, we struggled with 1,900 students to fit them all in the cafeteria, including the 2 patios on the east and west side of campus, and including a teal and black line on both sides that allowed them to move out into some of the courtyard seating that we could provide supervision all around. So with 1,900 students, it was a struggle. With 2,700 students, with that size cafeteria, it's a virtual impossibility with 3 lunches. Group supervision times, the only reason we point this out is because what we have preached for years with our administrators is we want to maximize the time that they're in classrooms providing support to students and providing support to the teachers. And so the longer that our administrators are tied up with supervisory duties such as lunch duty, which obviously lunch is an important part of the day, but the longer that time period is stretched out for, that's less time that they're available to be in the classrooms and providing support to the students. So right now, if you think about the Power Hour structure, they're tied up for all of 3rd period because they're providing support for A side while B side is in 3rd period, and they're providing lunch support for B side while A side is in 3rd period. So at no time in the day is there ever an administrator in a classroom during 3rd period because they're all providing supervisory lunch duty for that Power Hour on both sides. So by going back to that model the way it was before, we had administrators available to be out in classrooms every class period, every single day to provide that support to the students and to the teachers. The participation for bus riders, which I already mentioned before, Westport is still predominantly a bus riding community, so providing them that opportunity to be able to participate in clubs during the day and other extracurricular activities, it has been vastly beneficial for those students, for their ability to network, to socialize, to find their niche. When you have 2,700 students on a campus, it's very easy to get lost, and when those students are able to connect with a group, with a teacher, with an organization, it provides them that opportunity to be a part of something and feel like they're a part of that school, and so it has been very beneficial in that way. The early college schedule, because we offer a full AA degree program, we had looked at the possibility of doing a full block schedule, which is what Forest High School does, but having a full block schedule is not possible with the full AA degree program because of the amount of time that those professors need to be able to meet on a weekly basis with their students to offer that program. And then lastly is the MTI transportation coordination. You know, this year we shifted with MTI. Instead of having a full-blown high school program there to only offering the CTE programs with students bused back and forth. And what we discovered with Westport with the Power Hour option we have this year is that those students who were going in the afternoon were actually missing an additional period of class, which meant that when they took their classes at Westport combined with the classes at MTI, they only had 5 classes. So in order to make 6 classes a year, they would have to do an additional class on virtual school on top of attending classes at both schools to get 6 periods in a year. And so going in the afternoon to MTI became impossible for most students at Westport that wanted that option. And I will turn it over now to Ms. Cruz, who will share some data and the updated plan.
Thank you so much. Okay, so when we looked at our data for this year, our actual referrals during Power Hour increased by almost 60%. And one of the issues that came was because since they were just on one side of the campus, if there was an issue, they weren't able to go to the other side. And a lot of students had trouble maneuvering what to do because maybe they had 3 classes on the east side and 3 on the west side. So that created a little bit less, time for them to be able to take care of things, and they really couldn't maneuver. The big thing about Power Hour is we want them to become self-advocates for themselves, and we have found that our students, whether they're the lower level students all the way up to the students that are in the early college AP classes, they learn to do that through the years of support. So this is our solution, is we are going to revamp Power Hour, and it's going to be alpha time. Okay, and so what it's going to do, it's going to be revamped. It's going to be academics, leadership, performances, because we are the Marion County Center for the Arts, homework, and activities. We'd like to go back to the 50-minute lunch period. We have Title I funds that we got last year that we did not have the previous year. And so we've been able to hire a Title I intervention teacher that we used last year for some tutoring in our den area, but still, it was hard to maneuver with, you can only go on this side, you can only go on that side. This way, we could really target the students and get them in. Another thing we've been blessed with is, thanks to Psychological Services, we have a PACE counselor that started with us this summer, and so she's going to be working with specific girls, which maybe would help alleviate the little girl problems or the few girl fights, like when I was here before with the 7 girls, if they got to meet with the counselor and work with them. And then our clubs, we have 53 clubs, and even though at first our numbers that were signed up were still pretty good, the participation was way down. And so if we can get our students involved in those extracurricular activities, which they can't do when they can't ride the bus or when they're on the bus, then they can be more attached, more involved, and it's very important for that. What we do every year is we have our new students will be coming in on the 30th for our freshman orientation, and so we have our older students ambassadors. We will train those students and introduce the Alpha Time to them on the 29th. Then when the students come in, our brand-new freshmen that are brand new, we can tell them what the expectations are, what they would do, and then each year in August, the entire school does school-wide expectations for the first 2 days, so we all are on the same page. At that time, they'll have their schedule, they can identify where they're going to go, set some expectations, and it's great because all of us are out during Power Hour. The relationships we build, we can target particular students. You need to go here. If they don't, they don't know where they need to go, we can kind of target them to where they need to be. And then we'll have the increased supervision because every teacher will either be during their lunch or in their classroom working with the students. So we really, think that this is a better option. We went in with the 2 lunches. We did the best that we could, but we found out it just was not working. We're a very unique school. We've got so many things. It really can be like the college campus. All students can learn, and we want them to do that. Our remedial students, working with our reading teachers, if they can't get over to that side of campus, then that's another excuse for that. So I just, really hope that you guys will look at this and understand we want to do, like you do, what's best for kids. So if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer.
One thing that I would like to see, because I like an apples-to-apples comparison, we're talking about graduation rates. I believe it's called Survey 5. Is that the last survey with the data people of the year? I'd like a copy of for Westport, the Survey 5 for 2000, was it 10 and 11? So it would be 2011 was your year that you're comparing. There's a reason I want to look at it. And I'd like a copy of last year's Survey 5. And I'd like because it will show me some information that I'd like to see. And I'd like to see it for all 4 grade levels, broken out as all 4 grade levels. Because what I'm looking at, and Dr. Mayer, we've had this conversation before, I want to look at where we were with home education, home education moves in 2011 to where we are with home education moves now. That tells me something. So you know what I'm looking for, Dr. Mayer? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if... I still like what you get, Mrs. Stacy. I want to look at... I think things have probably changed in the last couple of years over what they were. I hope they've gone in the right direction, and by her smile, I think maybe they have. But I'd like to see that Survey 5. I don't care about all the stuff in between, just those 2. Okay? Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Thur.
Okay. It is one of our paramount responsibilities to teach kids personal responsibility, time management, and effectively managing their time. I've talked to a lot of students, and they said that the split power hour was a disaster for them. It just seemed like it was Murphy's Law that the subject that they needed the most help in was on the wrong side of the darn campus. So it was like shooting themselves in the foot. You've used your data very effectively. It's the girl group fights that have been the big issue.
It's like that with my dogs, too. They fight.
So targeting that and having an intervention to put into place, with the PACE counselor is really key. And this is a very small sliver of your population, but it's important because these are the kids that'll get you. It's our EBD kids that have constant supervision on their IEPs that somehow they need that structure time. If they're in self-contained because they can't handle free time, then they need to have structured alpha time.
Yes, and we do. I mean, we'll handle that. I mean, we do that with those students. We know who our target students are. And then having that, once again, with the Title I intervention person, that will help with that. So we're really targeting in on the students that need that extra support, and those that are like your son and others that were, there in higher level classes, they can learn. And then when they go away to college, they've been coming to see me all summer saying, thank goodness I did early college. Thank goodness I had that. And a lot of them are upset that the power hours changed because they know what it meant to them. And they, when they go away to college, so many of them come back because they don't know how to maneuver that extra free time. We're teaching them that, but we're also scaffolding that and starting out with our ambassadors right at the beginning and then having them work. And we're really looking at a mentor program with our upper level students because the number of students that we have that are out and come back, we see them at MTC and different places saying, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And you're like, come back, talk to our kids. So.
And Sam's doing great, by the way. He managed to remember why he was in college and had a successful freshman year at FAU. So hopefully he'll get 3 more under his belt and be done.
Revelation's always nice.
Yes. And see, there was one other note that yes, setting the expectations proactively, great, so the kids know what's required. On the consequence side, and I thought this was brilliant on Ellspermann's behalf, that if there was a big fight or something, or the campus was getting littered, or she had the ability somehow to very quickly switch that from a block schedule to a 6-period day. Those kids did not have power hour for a week, and a week seems like a lifetime. You think, it should be all 9 weeks. No way. Those kids got the message quickly. They pulled themselves together, and so I am a big fan of teaching kids personal responsibility and scaffolding it into the world so that we don't just let them loose and then say, well, they couldn't handle it. They had to come home.
And the ones that cause you to lose the power hour, let the peers deal with them.
Ms. Cruz, you've done that.
Yes.
Right. Yes, thank you for that.
So, my comments, I think, I hear you, I trust you as a principal, and I think this is probably the right move. The reason we went to what we had to go to in 2018 was because OPD told us that there was a lot going on at that school during that power hour. So I want to be sure, and it appears that you are addressing a lot of that with Title I, with the PACE counselor. So hopefully that will be, I just want to be sure that the supervision is very good on the campus, which it sounds like it will be. But I agree. I mean, Westport is such a unique campus and a unique school. And we need it to be successful. And the kids riding the bus, they don't have the opportunity to participate. And that's a part of being in high school, is being able to participate, grow that self-esteem, find your niches that may take you. And so your alpha time, and I think we need to say alpha times.
Power hour's gone, alpha time.
So that we are rebranding and that we're being very careful about the supervision of those students. But you tried it our way. It didn't work. Obviously, it didn't work. Look at the discipline referrals. So kudos for a new plan, and I look forward to you sharing with us how it is working, and I want to see those discipline referrals go down even farther than the 95.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yeah, but make sure if there is misbehavior, it is documented, because we were at a conference, and if we're not, you could be held accountable. Yeah, it could be pretty bad. So, yeah, like them, I just want to reiterate, the reason why the board did suggest that last year was because we were told it was a logistical nightmare, and you did try it, and it was still a nightmare. So, you are the expert, you're living it, breathing it, and seeing it, unlike we are. So we're confident in an alpha hour, I guess, so.
All right.
You good,
Okay.
Dr. Mayor, with it?
Yes, yes, and thank you. Thank you for, well, everything, yeah. And just for the record too, to note that you all briefed Reverend Cummings yesterday by phone.
Yes,
You had the
yes,
conference
sure did,
call with
sure
him,
did,
so thank you for that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Did you ever reach out to, like, sheriff or OPD, whoever, which
It
one's
was
out there?
Chief Graham.
OPD?
It was
Is
OPD.
Graham? Have you reached out to him just to come and, like, maybe give some suggestions or anything, like,
I
their
have not,
thoughts?
but I have an appointment next week with Angie Scroggy
Oh.
because she is the new person that's in charge and we're going to meet, so.
Okay, so yeah, maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, they might know something that we don't, because you're the education expert, they're the safety.
Right, right.
so,
And then we
okay.
do have the 2 officers now, so we just need them out and moving, and, you know, we can get around the kids, and, I mean, I'm always out during power hour, and you can find out a lot. And
Alpha.
Alpha. Well, I was power hour. Alpha time. Yeah, we need to remember that, so, that's right.
We have to have that paradigm shift of
Yeah, we
changing,
do.
changing the name will change the perception, hopefully.
Exactly,
new name.
because people will say stuff, oh, that power hour, and I'm like, how do you know? You've never been there. It's good for kids.
Yeah.
So, I thank you very much.
And Mr. Whitehouse, at that meeting, it might be great for you to be there as well with the area safety specialist, so everybody gets to meet. That would be a great time to do that. Thank you.
And you know what? Just one last thought. We were at the Florida School Boards Association meeting last week, and one of the breakout sessions were the detectives that did all the interviews of all of the people related to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas tragedy. And the one biggest thing that came out of that was the see something, say something, do something quickly, building relationships. And if that had happened, that would have never occurred.
No, it did. They did. They did say something. They were ignored.
Well,
And also,
yes,
that's why.
Yes, that's what I
yeah.
mean, that when you do say something, do something
follow
quickly.
through.
That's the
Yeah.
do something.
Right, and that's what, yeah.
Including the FBI.
Yeah,
Who
including the FBI
apologized.
or their principal, but remember
Yeah,
the superintendent
principal.
and all of them, 0. There was 0 incidences, even though other counties had like 40-something and stuff, so,
Well, if we hear
yeah.
something, we do something about that. We
Yeah.
had that in
You can
graduation
build those
practice where a
relationships.
student Came and talked to us and we took care of it right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that student is no longer a citizen of our fine institution.
Okay, thank you.
It's hopefully being followed by law enforcement in the community.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none. All right, well, we have about an hour left before we're not gonna have a quorum. When I look at this, it looks like
He's not gonna go that long.
emergency management, okay, so, all right, Terrence. So we're gonna go with emergency management manual with Mr. Terrence Smith.
Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor,
Afternoon.
Presbytino, and Mr. Gibbs. Good morning. How are you all? I just want to take this opportunity to give you a quick update on the Emergency Management Manual and get an overview of it for those who are not aware of the content of the manual. It's essentially a quick reference guide for the public and employees for sheltering situations. Currently we provide 14 shelters as outlined, as governed by Florida Statute 252.385. The manual lists all 14 shelters and staff assigned to each of those shelters. It contains all that information. It also contains the names of support service personnel assigned to each of the open shelters, to include those from transportation, which are a key component of the sheltering operation. The manual also lists the capacity limits for impact in general population shelters. I know Mr. Bolin presented last time at the work session. He discussed the shelter deficits situation where I believe we were in yellow and some of the surrounding counties were in red. These are the numbers that he was referring to as the capacities where we're at. I would like to take this opportunity to endorse Mr. Kelly and Mr. Bolin's proposed project. I think that would greatly benefit the school board. It would greatly impact our shelter deficit situation. It would increase our special needs numbers substantially. And the 2 current shelters that we have, Westport High School and Bellevue High School, those all could be converted back to general population impact shelters, with the addition of, we have 2 cafeteria projects in the works to harden them, to make them to increase our numbers. So overall, it would probably put us back in the green as far as our shelter deficit, with an asterisk, attached to that, due to the other surrounding counties in red. We're gonna have a carryover from, in situations where we get a bad storm coming through. The manual also provides recommendations for our staff during severe weather situations to include thunderstorms, tornadoes, lightning, and flooding. There are two versions of the manual that we have, the public and the confidential version. They're essentially the same manual. For transparency purposes, the manuals are designed the same and include the same information minus personal phone numbers for our personnel. Obviously, we do not want that going public. Some of the changes for the 2019-20 version of the manual is essentially the same except for some minor but convenient improvements. One improvement is direct links to the pages that you want to access within the electronic version of the manual. No more having to scroll or flip from page 52 from the table of contents. With the electronic version, there's hyperlinks linked to it, so if you want to go to page 52, you can click to page 52. In the previous versions of the manual, you had to scroll through the pages, flip the pages to get to it, and I wanted to make it a lot easier and user-friendly. Another aspect of it, I use lighter color ink, as much as possible to save money on ink, especially color ink. We eliminate unnecessary underlining, images, bold, or italicized lettering. We reduced the manual size from 120 pages to down to 100 pages. For example, with this presentation, I know each of you have a copy of the manual, and we have some more back up here. With that, with the savings, I ended up reducing about 700 pieces of paper and a substantial amount of ink just in this presentation alone. So the idea is to try to reduce as much waste as we can with the manual. We reduced the number of pages, however, we also substantially added more content via hyperlinks, web links, or websites, which are not crucial components of the manual and its primary function as a reference guide. So they're basically fillers and stuff like that that was eliminated with the original manual, the 120 pages. So we reduced the fillers, but we added some of those fillers back and more content via web links and hyperlinks in the manual. In closing, the 2019-20 Emergency Management Manual contains the same content as the previous versions of the manual. This year's notable changes have to do more with cost savings, convenience, and ease of use. It is intended to be downloaded on your mobile device, laptop, desktop, tablet, to avoid any unnecessary printing if possible. I love the quote, "Simplicity is the key to brilliance." We took this approach in streamlining the manual and simplifying the ease of use. It is essentially a quick reference guide, and we wanted to keep it simple for our staff to quickly locate the information they need quickly and efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was pretty quick.
So I like that you have the hyperlinks because
Yes.
yes, it makes a difference when you want to look
Makes
at
it a lot easier
a
to-
school or something like that. That's a shelter who's in charge. Yeah, it makes it very much easier. Thank you.
How often will you be updating the names of different school board employees and their assignments? Because I'm noticing some in here that aren't here anymore.
Some of them, I update them pretty regularly, and I know after July, we get some changes too, and I'll go back through it again and update it again. And I try to keep up with it as much as I can.
It's a big job.
Yeah, things change quickly, especially around July, that time. I don't think we're gonna see any significant changes to that, but I'll update it as we go. I know I do have some, I think, technical services that I need to update and get updated to, some changes that recently happened too there. So I try as much as I can, as regularly as I can, to keep it updated and get it out there to make sure everybody's aware and on the same page, especially when we have a storm coming.
I wonder if there is a way that from the top somehow, whenever there is a change, that they can notify you rather than you trying to seek. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there should be one point of contact up at the top, like Grantham's office, or like they know who's coming and going, or human resource, somewhere. And if they could just once a week notify you, no changes or whatever, because that's a difficult task for you if you don't
It is.
really
Sometimes we
know.
have to track people down, track divisions down, and get the information and reach out to them. And everybody's busy, we understand. So we try to go that, to that level and do the job for them and get that information and fill it in as much as we can. That would help a lot, especially on one person,
Okay.
trying to get all that information and gather it for the.
Dr. Mayor, who would be a good point? Who would that be that could let him know, like, weekly?
We have our department meeting Monday, so we'll
Work on that? Okay. That sounds good.
Weekly arrest reports.
Right, that way you just, because the time to find out is not during a hurricane or a storm, You just want everything just to go smooth as possible. Okay, are there any more questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none. All right, Mr. Hurley. Hurley, are you gonna keep it till 10 minutes? It said 10. I didn't buy that.
I was wondering
I was
about that
like-
too.
I didn't. I was like, because we like to talk.
We like to talk.
Yeah, to him.
Morning, Madam Chair, board
Good
members.
morning, afternoon, morning.
Me. Dr. Mayor, Mr. Prestipino, and Mr. Gibbs. So usually when I come here in June, I have information that relates to things like boundary changes or rezonings, enrollment trends, school capacity, or site acquisition and disposal. And recently, you've heard information on all of those things. So I was at a bit of a loss as to what to deliver. I just scratched around a bit, and there are a couple of things that are of note. A couple are just recaps, and then there's a couple of others I'll ask a little bit of direction on. So in staying true to form, I'll go by my script. And item 1, the first bullet I have is that I think you'll recall that I mentioned the board, by way of settling on the eminent domain case, now owns the 30 acres in Silver Spring Shores. So
We do, so that's done.
yes, that was done in May, in early May. So you have after all those years, I think it took 8 years. It took about 8 years, I think, to get that. So to me, the logical thing to do is to follow up. That had always been, in my mind, conceived in conjunction with a plan for the long-term fate of Lake Ware Middle.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is work on that, and when I come back in October, along with this item and the next one, I'll come back with some further information, perhaps a plan or some bones to work with there for that. The second bullet I have is the land swap on Northwest 80th Avenue with Golden Ocala World Equestrian and Winding Oaks. That's proceeding along, and we're looking towards closing in mid to late September. So, right now, it's going through land use with the city. The city council should see it in a week or so, and then it will go off to Tallahassee for some review, and then it takes another vote by city council, and we don't expect any problems with that. That said, I'll reiterate that I will bring back information on that, how that's coming along, when I get to you in October. And then I have two items that are inquiries or requests. The firm that purchased the small piece of land in Dunellen, they have approached me or contacted me indicating or expressing an interest in some of the additional land that's kind of wrapping around the Boys and Girls Club there. I think that, and this is something I need to talk with Mr. Gibbs about, but we probably need to offer it for bid first. But if it's anything like the past experience, there's not a whole lot of interest in that area. So in doing that, this firm would be aware of it, and so that's a possibility for some income in the past. I think that the most likely price per acre, their recent sale, which was December of last year, was I want to say $131,000 an acre.
How many acres are we looking at?
Well, what's there that could be potentially carved out is a little bit over an acre. So it's nominal, but something like that would be beneficial if, and I'm not sure that they are interested in all of it. I think they're doing the same thing they did before, is they're wanting to aggregate or assemble it with some adjacent property. So I will follow up on that and talk with Mr. Gibbs about how to handle that, if you would like to do that.
Yep.
Okay. And then the last thing I have is there's a half-acre property that's a residential, it's a single-family home adjacent to the north side, northeast corner of South Ocala Elementary. It's when you come in from the back side, I would call it. The front side I would call Lake Weir, but the back side there. And I've been approached or contacted by the executor of the estate indicating that they wanted to give the school board first shot at that. And I don't know, as handling, from the standpoint of handling real estate
Shot at what,
issues.
sir?
A shot at, I'm sorry, a purchase of the property, given that it's an estate now. And so the only reason that I just didn't, tell the fellow that I thought it was not something that the school board could use is that we have, in years past, there's been a letter from previous superintendent going way back granting access from school board property through a gate to the back portion of that property. So I think that probably the most prudent thing we could do, and again, I'll get with Mr. Gibbs on this, is to see about just doing away with that access at this point in time. I don't know if there's a consensus on.
I don't see why
There must have been someone living there that's
back
kids went to
then,
school.
yeah.
Well, actually, the lady that lived there was a school board employee long ago.
Oh,
Times have changed.
times have changed.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
30, 40 years
I
ago.
thought you were going to say the property was being gifted to us. I was about to get excited.
So, but that's all I have, and so if that sounds good, I'll follow up on those things and
Is everybody good?
Yeah, good.
see you in October.
Thank you.
Well, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. All right, well, we've already did our concerns.
Ready?
Good. All right, with no further business, our meeting is adjourned at 12:10.
45 minutes ahead of schedule. No one had to leave early.